In a completely dystopian and destroyed city called Exile Zone, a blonde boy in a hoodie stands in front of a billboard on a completely broken street. The billboard advertised the Dead Alive Club as a beacon of hope, highlighting an enhanced tournament with prizes of 3 million and a battle among black rings. The boy reflects on how 3 million is an enormous amount and that if he won, it would be enough to buy something for himself. But his thoughts are quickly interrupted by someone tapping his shoulder and asking what he was looking at. The boy says it was nothing really, but the man tries to snoop. Reading about the Dead Alive Club, he continues until the boy blocks his view and interrupts him. The man reads up to the part mentioning death as hope and questions what kind of hope could exist in that, considering slogans made for silver rings. For, in the end, they treat lives as if they were a game, making others kill for their own entertainment. He asks if the boy wasn't having some bad ideas, but the boy shakes his head, and the man says that's good because it wouldn't be easy. The boy asks if he managed to get the supplies anyway. The man says yes and that they would have a feast that night, pulling up his hood and revealing a robotic arm. The boy, with a soft smile on his face, observes his friend attentively. But soon he makes an angry face when he remembers Alvin's arm, saying that Alvin couldn't fall behind anymore. The man lowers his hood when he notices this and says that if others saw the supplies, they'd be in trouble. He pulls the boy, telling him to hurry to their house. The boy, without resistance, allows himself to be pulled and calmly affirms that everything was fine. 2 people fight in front of a truck. One of them claims the truck is his, while the other responds that he's just looking for trouble. The younger one strikes him and says storing supplies without teeth is useless. The old man begs them not to take his supplies, but the young man demands payment. Without even looking back, the young man throws the box into a truck full of supplies. The boy from before tells Alvin they can no longer use that route and should take another path, but Alvin tells him to wait. Observing the man kneeling on the ground, the boy asks if Alvin wasn't about to do something again. Alvin simply glances at him and nods, throwing a box of supplies to the old man, who doesn't understand anything. Alvin tells the man to fix himself up and go home, as it wasn't safe to be outside, leaving him astonished, grabbing the box and running off, saying that it was his food. That place was the Exile Zone, where people constantly fight for food and await death. Alvin turns his back and says they should leave. The old man runs into his house, clutching the box. Soon, men confront him, telling him to throw the food away if he doesn't want to die. In the Exile Zone, humanity, kindness, and truth are mere illusions. These feelings are utterly irrelevant in a place consumed by sins, where nothing matters beyond survival. Alvin wants to share the food, but Shannon disagrees, accusing him of wanting to play the hero. In the end, that place where they were was just filled with children God forgot. Shannon walks into the house along with Alvin. Inside, he opens a cabinet and says that Alvin, with the prosthetic, could live there as a worker. And with that they'd have less time to see each other. But Shannon asks if Alvin was listening. Alvin quickly falls asleep on the couch, with his hood acting as a blanket, and Shannon comments on this. Shannon approaches Alvin and properly covers him, standing still, staring at his robotic arm. Shannon holds it in his hands, silently observing Alvin's robotic arm. Remembering when they were kids, Alvin asked if he could go with Shannon, and Shannon said it was okay and that Alvin should wait for him, and just stay in that place, as Shannon would return, and Alvin agrees. But even so, Alvin keeps watching as Shannon walks away, clutching his backpack tightly, his eyes fixed on him as he gets farther and farther. However, he's soon surprised by 2 hands grabbing his hair and face. Shannon finally arrives with a box of supplies and calls Alvin, saying he managed to get them. But then he searches for his friend all along the street, hearing only a noise coming from the alley. Shannon calls for Alvin, but upon seeing the scene, he drops the box from his hands, paralyzed for a moment, unable to react to the shock that overtakes him. Alvin is lying on the ground, completely bloodied, crying and begging Shannon to save him. A man was on top of Alvin, his mouth smeared with blood, indicating he was devouring him. The man lifts Alvin's arm and asks if Shannon wanted a piece too. But Shannon, overcome with rage, just screams, his cry of hatred echoing. He reflects that if he hadn't left Alvin alone that day, none of this would have happened, and things would have been different. Sitting on a bed while watching Alvin sleep, Shannon gets up and attaches Alvin's arm back in place, saying he should wait for him because it was the arm Shannon owed him. The boy leaves the house and thinks he must return before dawn. He then closes the door, leaving Alvin alone inside the house. Meanwhile, a counter was at 10. That world was governed by rings of power, dividing it into the Celestial City, jurisdictional areas, and the Exile Zone. Children must test for any supernatural ability when they turn 8 years old, and by following this procedure, rings are created to store their personal information and correspond to their power level. The rings classify people into 5 levels, each represented by a distinct color. The special level is marked by the golden color, while the advanced level is identified by silver. The normal and subnormal levels are represented by bronze and gray, respectively. Finally, the lowest level, the most despised, is symbolized by black. Facing the evaluators, they say a man didn't have a bad physique and tell the next one to board the bus. Shannon reflects that it's his turn as he stands before the guard's scanner. When they attempt to access Shannon's information, an unexpected error occurs, blocking any attempt. The guards question the error, and Shannon replies that it's common when collecting supplies. They ask if it happened before and warn him to be cautious since he's entering the jurisdiction, and another says they'll scan again. He tries to scan Shannon's ring, but the error blocks access once more. One of the men yells that if he doesn't register, he should leave because there are people waiting. Shannon remains silent, waiting as they attempt to scan his ring again, and a man in a yellow hoodie smacks the back of his head, asking if he was deaf. Others watch the scene and begin to whisper among themselves about what could be so strange about that man. Shannon merely looks back, his gaze piercing into the man. The man loudly questions what Shannon wanted with that look. Shannon turns his head, orders the guards to scan the ring one more time. Shannon looks back and firmly states that he needs to participate, as if it's of utmost importance to him. The man tries to kick Shannon, but with agility, Shannon swiftly sidesteps, dodging easily. The man then falls awkwardly, and Shannon draws attention again. The guards observe the scene, impressed, thinking Shannon wasn't bad at all, demonstrating unexpected skill. A man with a cigarette remains silent, simply watching the scene with a sharp gaze, saying nothing. But the man in the yellow hoodie gets up, glaring at Shannon, and calls him a stinking brat. He quickly pulls a knife, staring at Shannon, and says he underestimated his skill but is now ready to correct his mistake. But the guard announces that Shannon's identity has been confirmed and that he may now board the bus, and the boy thanks him. The guard looks at the man with a smile, and says it won't take much to kill him when they're on the field. The man complains, thinking the guard was acting almighty when he was just a standard level and not a silver ring. A man watches, finding it boring since he was rejected despite being better than Shannon, and his friend says he believes Shannon will die during the tournament. On the bus, the men say the rankings will shoot up like rockets, and they can't wait to see others crushed. But the smoking man says it's because of idiots like them that powerless people are considered bad and are treated like toys for their abilities. He stubs the cigarette on the asphalt before focusing entirely on Shannon. He says that if they hadn't been chosen, it meant they should go further, and the men beside him question what he meant, pointing out he was rejected too. The man says he just happened to be smoking there, and that's all. And those beside him say he should be clearer, and that he seems familiar, and that they don't recognize him and probably hadn't won enough matches. He fixes his hair and asks if they remember him now. And the men exclaim that he's Quentin, the record holder for consecutive wins, 40 years old with 8 straight victories. The guards tell Quentin not to miss the bus and to get ready, and the man simply agrees. Inside the bus, Quentin looks for a seat. Finally, the bus starts and departs, because it was a two-way road, and they couldn't escape the fate of death. In the jurisdiction area, within the repository system, a man is typing on a keyboard until he notices something, standing in front of a computer server. He says those eyes are like his. Looking at Shannon's information, he says that Shannon could be the child of God. Shannon reflects that he just needs to return before dawn so Alvin doesn't go looking for him. Otherwise, he'll get scolded. He imagines Alvin scolding him for leaving and thinks he'll probably be locked up until death. But a man quickly approaches and tries to stab Shannon from behind. Moving the knife in his hand, the man attempts to hit the boy. But Shannon quickly presses the chair's button, jumping up, and delivers a precise kick to the man's hand, sending the knife flying away. Finally throwing the knife to the floor, he disarms the man with ease. Everyone on the bus questions if they're going to fight there, and Shannon jumps out of his seat. Quentin remains silent, attentively observing the scene. The man in the yellow hoodie says Shannon won't survive if he resists, and that it's better to kill him before the tournament. Shannon thinks this is bad and that he can't waste too much energy here, so he needs to end it quickly, or he won't be fit to fight during the tournament. But if he starts a fight now, and his strength is recognized, he'll become a target for everyone there. He then stands facing the man, motionless for a moment. The hooded man says he's going to kill Shannon but is surprised by Quentin, who punches him. Shannon is impressed by the situation and asks aloud what just happened, but the driver says it's great Quentin is taking responsibility for him until they reach their destination. Quentin calmly says that if they leave the man with him, he won't wake up again. Shannon wonders if Quentin really knocked out such a big guy with just one punch. He then thanks Quentin, reflecting that if he has to fight Quentin, he stands no chance of victory. Quentin asks if he would thank an opponent, and when talking about the fight, Shannon tries to warn him. But the knife handle falls on Quentin's head, and he wonders what happened. When the bus reaches the jurisdiction area, they see a tunnel in the distance. As they pass through the light in the tunnel, the environment briefly brightens. Getting closer to the light, the bus advances, with the brightness increasing. They are amazed to see a city illuminated during the night. Shannon watches excitedly, thinking it's entirely different from the landscape of the previous jurisdiction area. Shannon keeps his eyes on it, and says this is where advanced people live, the jurisdiction area. Then he sees a reaper with a statue. Shannon stands before the statue and says it's incredible and impressive. Seeing the distorted smile of the statue, someone tells them to prepare and get ready. In the area, there's a giant reaper hovering in massive gates with a countdown display. The crowd gets excited, cheering enthusiastically as the tournament approaches its start. And Shannon is walking in the back area along with the other competitors. But he soon notices something strange amidst the crowd, something that stands out and catches his attention. He sees some guards carrying a dead man on a cart, causing a sense of unease in the air. Shannon reflects that these are the competitors who lose their lives during the tournament, a grim fate that could await anyone there. The guards say there are too many bloody bodies and pull the blanket off the cart. The guard with the cart presses a button with his foot, opening a door in front of him. Without hesitation, he throws the bodies inside, disappearing them in an instant. Shannon reflects that they are damned for treating others like trash, and he remains silent, just watching the scene with anger. In a gigantic mansion bathed in moonlight, the silence of the night dominates, as if the vastness of the place hides many secrets. An electrified door opens, revealing a maid in front, calling her young master. She tells him that the day of the prophecy has finally arrived, and then the door opens, and a man steps out, with the maid completing her statement that he can now begin his journey. In the preparation room, 7 people lean in various corners, watching in silence, as if waiting for an order to act. Shannon reflects, watching a man carefully preparing a blade. A man with daggers and another with brass knuckles get ready. Meanwhile, 2 others, one with a staff and another with a bat, adjust their weapons. So, except for him, everyone has equipment, and he thinks that number 4 wasn't a lucky number. According to the elimination round rules, there are 7 competitors but only 6 pieces of equipment. Based on the order of equipment selection, victory rates are determined, and those with a higher chance get to choose first. The competitor with the lowest win rate enters unarmed. Shannon reflects that it's fine because no one would expect anything from someone with a 1.2% chance. He finally notices Quentin walking down the corridor, and he says that considering this old guy, who seemed strong and had this kind of power, surviving in the Exile Zone wasn't difficult. A man appears in front of Shannon and asks if he knows Quentin, but Shannon doesn't respond, and the man threatens him, claiming a 30.5% win rate, repeating his question. Shannon says he doesn't know him, and the man says Quentin helped him on the way there, questioning if Shannon is hiding strength or something like that since Quentin admires those who are truly strong, but Shannon says he doesn't even have a weapon. The man warns him not to lie, or he'll die, pressing a weapon against Shannon's stomach. But the tournament finally begins, and the man steps back, wishing him good luck. The guards tell the contestants to wear the equipment prepared for them in the stadium. They then hand out some micro-bombs to the participants, each one carefully packaged and ready to use. The man from before comments on their variety of tricks, and others begin talking. Shannon quickly grabs the bomb, taking advantage of the distraction to prepare. He asks if he can enter the stadium now, and the guard simply agrees. Shannon then moves toward the stage, saying the battle is about to begin. A narrator announces that the tournament will have only one survivor and that they must eliminate others before the countdown ends. All the contestants meet in the arena with the timer set at 15 minutes, with the narrator saying that showing mercy will lead to their explosion. In the King's Tournament preparation room, people bet that Shannon will be the first to die, wagering 10,000 on it, watching the screen alongside Quentin. But soon, they are amazed by what's happening in the tournament. It's out of the ordinary. Quentin watches the scene intently, remaining silent as he follows it on his television. A man's bat gets stuck in the bars, leaving him perplexed, wondering how that could happen. He questions how Shannon can dodge all the attacks. The man frees his bat and, with a serious expression, tells Shannon to stop just playing around. Then, he tries to hit Shannon several times, but every attempt fails, with Shannon dodging every blow. Shannon says he's too slow. The man attempts a horizontal strike, but Shannon thinks he's full of openings. Shannon then lands a direct punch to the man's face, causing him to stagger backward from the impact, throwing him far away while Shannon remains silent. The spectators comment that Shannon's reflexes are extraordinary. Shannon simply clenches his fist, thinking that, as expected, he couldn't exert much force. The man says he didn't feel any pain despite the hit. Shannon comments that he just has tough skin, and the opponent warns him not to be arrogant. But number 5 is interrupted by someone asking whom he intends to kill. It's number 2, saying Shannon is his. Then, he throws the man aside after slashing his neck. Shannon thinks the man carries a heavy killing intent. Number 2 says Shannon embarrassed him on the bus, and now no one can stop him from killing him here. The timer shows 10 minutes remaining. Number 6 declares he's giving up and wants to leave the tournament. as he no longer cares about the cash prize. He orders the guards to open the door and let him out, but the guard simply presses a button in his hand. The collar around the man's neck begins to blink. Finally, it explodes, sending another contestant flying. Number 3, sitting atop a dead body, says they stole his publicity. Then he observes the exploded man's corpse on the ground. He strikes the man lying underneath him. Shannon continues dodging all of number 2's attacks. Shannon lands thinking that the man's speed and strength have increased. He must have been hiding his power on the bus. Therefore, continuing to dodge like this will drain his energy and waste time. He wonders what Alvin would do. To survive in the Exile Zone, Alvin and Shannon never dared to relax. Alvin reflects that Shannon had improved again and had tried to deliver his best punches, but he still couldn't land a hit. That incredible thought, therefore, was something supernatural. Alvin tells Shannon that he admits his reflexes are strong, but just dodging won't help him win against danger. Attacking is the chance for victory. From that day forward, Alvin says he should train harder. Alvin charges toward Shannon, asking if he's ready, but Shannon asks for a quick break. However, Shannon says his body feels as if it's cursed and apologizes to Alvin because, even after training, he hasn't improved. Alvin observes that, despite his reactions getting better, his strength hasn't grown, joking that enemies would die of old age before hitting him. Sitting beside Shannon, he says it's very strange. He wonders if the delay in Shannon's progress could be related to the woman in his dreams, or if the woman he dreams of is wearing a divine ring. But Shannon says it's just a dream and couldn't have anything divine related to it. Alvin tells him not to be discouraged because, if opponents can't hit him, all he needs to do is run, and Shannon mocks his friend's encouragement. Yet every day, Shannon hides from his one-armed brother. The fact that he hates his own weakness and inability while training on a punching bag. He punches the bag, thinking he really wants to become stronger, and refuses to accept this fate. With his base established, he reflects that he can't keep being a coward forever. He charges toward number 6, saying he can do this. Number 2 tries to punch him, but Shannon dodges. He prepares an uppercut, thinking there are many openings and a chance. But his punch is caught by number 2, who questions what was wrong with his punch, and Shannon thinks it was bad. Number 2 tries to slash him with a blade, asking if Shannon intended to tickle him. However, Shannon simply jumps to dodge. He lands on the ground as number 2 mocks him, calling him a dysfunctional fool, and laughs, saying he's just a stinking rat. Standing in front of Shannon, ready with his knife. Those watching think Shannon manages to be both weak and strong at the same time. Outside, while humming a strange tune, a man approaches a warehouse. He knocks twice, waiting for a response, asking who's there and if it's Shannon, indicating he's Alvin. Number 3 throws something at a drone. Shannon notices this and looks to the sky for a second. He realizes it's something aimed at the drone. It's a microbomb. He then looks at number 3, who fires at the microbomb, causing an explosion in the area. The commentators say it's dishonest but expected no less from someone with the highest win rate. Number 2 gets up burned. Number 3 looks at Shannon, wanting to see how he's doing now. But he notices Shannon walking out of the explosion and wonders how he dodged it. Shannon simply stands, his head pounding. Meanwhile, number 2 charges at number 3, saying he asked for this. Shannon notices a weapon lying on the ground nearby. He sees number 2 standing over number 3 with the blade pointed at him. Number 3 regains control, complaining. Number 2 finally shouts at Shannon to grab the weapon from the ground. He tells Shannon to shoot him, but the boy just observes with a neutral expression. Number 2 says that if Shannon helps him, he'll give the boy all 3 million. But he's soon stabbed by number 3, who calls him an idiot, coughing in his final breaths. Number 3 stands up and says it's become a mess. He starts walking toward Shannon, saying he's next, but he's pierced in the chest by someone, then takes another shot to the head. It's number 1, holding the weapon, who declares that the 3 million prize is his. Finally, number 3 collapses to the ground. Drones hover over the arena after the defeat of numbers 3 and 2. The massive stadium falls silent for a few seconds, but a man arrives watching the end of the match on the city's big screen, walking and sighing, wearing his suit. He finally uses his ability while analyzing the billboard, saying for Shannon not to die as he's under his responsibility, and calling him a black ring. Suddenly, the city's power poles explode with electricity surging from the man. The same happens throughout the city, causing widespread electrical short circuits. In traffic lights and street lights are broken. Across the city, people question if it's an energy overload. In ordinary homes, light bulbs explode, and some people even get injured. The entire city falls into chaos, thanks to the energy of that man. He walks through the chaos, smiling while still manifesting his ability. Shannon says he won't let number 1 claim the prize, and his opponent is surprised. He remarks that only the 2 of them remain, with a weapon, and asks what Shannon plans to do. Shannon reflects that, given his current condition, it doesn't seem like he has a chance, but he can't give up. The drone commentators note that number 4, Shannon, is still fighting. Shannon reflects that things have already gone too far, and number 1 gets ready to shoot, declaring the game is over. The narrator urges him to finish it with one shot. Shannon reflects that Alvin is waiting for his return, and the shot finally fires. Shannon feels a chill down his spine but closes his eyes and concentrates. He senses the bullet getting closer, accompanied by a warm breeze mixed with the taste of rust. Surprisingly, Shannon dodges the bullet, saying it was too slow. The narrator questions what's wrong with number 1 to miss a shot from that distance, and number 1 questions himself as well. He wonders if Shannon could be a black ring but then decides it's impossible. Shannon reflects that his head is getting dizzy and that he needs to hold on for now. With a desperate look, number 1 tells Shannon to die. He charges at him with a dagger, determined to end him once and for all. But Shannon easily dodges the dagger. He reflects that, with his strength, he can't defeat his opponent in a single strike, and number 1 isn't strong, hitting his chin. Shannon remembers that if he's fast enough, he can counterattack to win. Finally, he grabs number 1's arm and steals the knife. He points it at the man's neck, realizing there's no time left, and that he needs to strike quickly but not kill. He hesitates for a moment, and both of them remain still. Shannon notices a terrible force heading their way. The countdown, stuck at 4 seconds, halts. In the spectator room, they note there's no time left, and the fighters shouldn't remain idle, while Quentin thinks about Shannon. Then, the power goes out in the room due to the electricity, and they wonder if there's a blackout. Quentin reflects that this isn't a normal power failure. In a corridor filled with banners of the Dead Alive Club, Quentin recalls it being the work of someone with a supernatural ability, as the man walks down the hallway. Back in the arena, the countdown remains frozen at 1 second due to the electricity. Shannon wonders if the bomb malfunctioned. Number 1 kneels, saying he's truly saved, but Shannon, unable to wait, realizes someone is coming. A guard finally arrives in the arena and announces that the match has been paused and they must return to the waiting room. Number 1 asks about the prize, claiming he almost died and wants to split it in half, but the guard says it will be decided later. Meanwhile, Shannon notices something. The man with the electricity stands beside him and remarks that Shannon looks truly miserable, calling him Black Ring. He asks if Shannon won't thank his savior. Shannon reflects on the man being his savior and tries to speak, but the man interrupts him before he can finish, calling him truly weak. One of the guards orders an orderly evacuation of the area, while the man carries Shannon on his back. The guard demands to know who he is and orders him to put the boy down, stating that competitors cannot leave the club, but the man remains silent. The guard tries to grab him, insisting he follow orders, as Shannon is the club's property. However, the man throws the guard against the wall with electricity, and commands him to stay silent. Meanwhile, Quentin watches from the spectator room. A green-haired man asks what he's thinking. Quentin says there's been a change in the wind and reflects that the child with the black ring is the key to changing this world. He thinks about wanting to meet Shannon again someday. As he walks through the nighttime city, some bandits spot a car and say it looks good for stealing, while another bandit suggests it could be the legendary street told in myths. But inside the car is the man and Shannon, who reflects on how long he's been unconscious from this wound. The car begins emanating electricity as the bandits watch. The electricity causes Shannon to wake up. Shannon realizes that the man caused the chaos at the club, and the man says he's finally awake while Shannon asks who he is and what he's doing there. The boy notices the man is a supernatural ability user because of the oppressive aura emanating from him, freezing the distance between them. He wonders if the man is an advanced level, or even higher, but questions why a supernatural had saved him. Seeing hundreds of bodies, Shannon remarks that he has already seen enough for himself. In that world, those with black rings are treated like toys. Shannon reflects that he has many questions, but it's better to hold back his curiosity since getting involved with supernaturals isn't a good idea. The man introduces himself as Leo Chuan. Shannon, ready to leave, is surprised. He quickly wonders about the surname, Leo, noting that it belongs to the third-ranked family among the 8 great families and is of special grade. Shannon reflects that this means the man's collar is golden. Leo Chuan confirms this, but he warns Shannon not to think he can escape because, from now on, Shannon's life is his responsibility, calling him the child of divinity. Shannon recalls a legend that says above the special level is something far more formidable, the divine tier. A divine tier individual can fight against 100 special levels, an existence akin to a true god. Shannon says he's heard about the legend and the divine tier Leo Songting. Chuan confirms that Leo Songting is his grandfather. The boy comments that if Leo Songting is divinity, then he's Chuan's grandfather, and Chuan asks if he wants to die. Chuan then says that the legends about the divine tier aren't entirely correct. There were 3 individuals who, since the emergence of the first Esper, were recognized as divine tier. These were Chuan's grandfather, Leo Songting, Lady Wu Yu, who had powers of foresight and immortality, and another individual who was banished after rejecting the divine tear. And Shannon is the son of the immortal Esper, Lady Wuyu. Shannon questions if he's not some kind of evil tear, insisting Chuan shouldn't joke with him. He sarcastically reflects on being the child of divinity in his thoughts. But soon, he notices something strange and recalls his dream. Shannon wonders if his mother was the woman in his dreams, and Chuan says Shannon has many questions, but he'll answer them slowly. First, they must stay safe. Chuan explains that Shannon's face is being searched across the jurisdiction area and will soon reach the celestial city. It won't take long before people wanting him dead start appearing, and a new war is about to begin. The car finally drives off from that street. Leo Chuan observes Shannon, asking if it's difficult for him to accept reality. He asks why Shannon needed to participate in the elimination match, saying he must understand the importance of strength. Shannon replies that he needed the money. Shannon then asks Chuan to stop for a moment. They stop at a shop specializing in electronic prosthetics, where an old man asks if Shannon has succeeded this time, and the boy agrees. Chuan asks why Shannon is looking at him that way, and Shannon replies that Chuan took responsibility for him. Leo then tells the man to provide the best arm. While they prepare the arm, Shannon explains that Alvin, his friend from the Exile Zone, ended up there because of him. Shannon says he wanted to win to buy the arm and give Alvin a chance at a normal job. Chuan reflects that the tournament Shannon participated in will change the fate of many lives. Outside, Chuan tells Shannon to remember that everyone will target him, and since he's looking out for him, they should leave quickly. Shannon asks if he can return to Alvin to explain the situation before they leave, saying he also has many questions for Chuan. At Alvin and Shannon's house, Chuan says he'll wait in the car. A sparrow perched on the house watches the two of them. Shannon heads to the house, thinking he looks bad and Alvin will be angry, but it's not the time for that. He needs to resolve things regarding his identity. Shannon also looks forward to Alvin's reaction when he sees the new arm. Shannon opens the gate to his house and shouts for Alvin to wake up because he wants to show him something he found. He also says Alvin could never imagine what his gift is, but Shannon trips over something on the ground. It's Alvin's robotic arm, forcibly torn off and covered in blood. A voice says that Shannon is finally back and that he had been waiting for him for a long time, but Shannon is left speechless. The voice continues, saying that until he saw it with his own eyes, he couldn't believe Shannon had been hiding in a place where espers refused to set foot. The man snaps his fingers, and the lights in the room flicker on. He reveals himself as a man in a suit with a silver ring around his neck, declaring it an honor to meet the child of divinity, standing with his foot on Alvin's body. Shannon sees the man's foot on Alvin but doesn't hear his words, consumed by rage. The broken boy can only scream his friend's name, filling himself with anger. The man stands up and says he was the first to discover Shannon, and is now the closest to a god. Shannon continues murmuring Alvin's name, furious and sweating. The mechanical arm he had purchased falls from his grasp, hitting the ground heavily. He starts screaming so loudly that it confuses the man. The man stomps on Alvin again and says something to Shannon. He questions whether Shannon knows the person, but Shannon only thinks about getting closer to Alvin. He kneels and tells Alvin that he's back and that he should prepare and wake up. The man, impressed, asks if he's really crying for trash like that. The words hit Shannon hard, and he continues crying uncontrollably. The man grabs Shannon's shirt and calls him a loser without honor. Punching him in the stomach, he asks if he is really the son of divinity. Shannon crashes into the wall with enough force to cause damage, but then collapses to the ground. The man activates his Esper power, enveloping his hand. He uses it to pull Shannon's neck toward his grasp. The man wonders if he got the wrong person, saying Shannon is truly weak. Shannon reflects that he could have dodged the blow, but it no longer matters. He questions why it wasn't him who died instead. The man tightens his grip around Shannon's neck. Shannon is on the verge of losing consciousness, and then he blacks out. But he finds himself in the sky, entering an open door. Shannon wonders where this place is as hands appear to hold him. It's himself, ordering him to step inside. The other version of Shannon steps out of the door as the current one falls into it. Then, the Shannon with dark eyes calls the present Shannon a coward. Before Shannon can ask him to wait, the door closes. The man notices something different about Shannon, making him break into a sweat. But Shannon grabs his hand tightly, and throws him away as if he were nothing. Shannon exhales lightly afterward. Then, he begins to approach the man. The man realizes his hand has been broken. He sees a terrifying version of Shannon standing before him. The man pleads for mercy, saying he didn't mean to do it. Shannon prepares to place his hand on the man's face, while the man thinks Shannon's aura is completely different from before. The man asks how this happened as Shannon stands before him. Everything around them begins to move with Esper energy. The man hurls objects toward Shannon, questioning how he dares to create such chaos and vowing to send him to hell. Shannon notices the incoming attack, but the Esper's hand stops abruptly in front of his face. The man realizes his hand is no longer obeying him. Objects start levitating around Shannon, and the man realizes it's telekinesis. Shannon grabs the man's face and pushes him, hurling him against the wall so hard that it makes him bleed. Then, Shannon throws all the previously floating objects at him. The man tries to defend himself, but Shannon shows no intention of stopping the attack. Barely managing to dodge, the man reflects that he underestimated Shannon because he had a black ring and should have finished him earlier, cursing him. The man remembers that telekinesis has a range limit, so the farther away he is, the less Shannon can do to him. But he notices Leo Chuan standing in front of him, electricity emanating from his crossed arms. Leo asks if the man thinks he can just create chaos and walk away. The man recognizes the scar on Leo's face, combined with the electrical attribute and a golden ring, confirming that it's definitely Leo Chuan. As Shannon approaches him, the man finally regrets everything, overwhelmed by fear. Shannon forces the man's own hand to strangle him, and the man begs him to stop. But Shannon also forces the man's other hand to strike the one pressing on his neck. This causes the man's trachea to break with the force of Shannon's Esper power. The man collapses, lifeless, and Shannon simply kicks him aside, sighing in front of Leo Chuan. Leo asks if Shannon intends to attack him too, but Shannon just collapses to the ground. His powers dissipate into the air. Leo notes that Shannon now resembles the savior from the prophecy. After some time, in the same warehouse, Shannon wakes up, calling for Alvin, but notices he's lying on the couch in his house, while Alvin rests on a bed, completely covered. He sees Leo Chuan outside the house with the electrocuted body of the man. Chuan, smoking a cigarette outside, asks if Shannon has finally woken up. Shannon stands and approaches Alvin's bed. He pulls the blanket from Alvin's face and sees his lifeless expression. Shannon embraces Alvin's dead body but collapses to the floor while holding him. Leo Chuan remains silent, observing the scene. However, Shannon rises and carries Alvin outside the house. With a cold expression, Shannon walks with his friend's lifeless body in his arms. He finally reaches the tree where they used to train with the punching bag and begins digging a grave, covering Alvin's body with soil bit by bit. Shannon looks at the dirt falling through his hands, remaining silent. He finally starts covering his childhood friend's face, until he buries it completely. Shannon kneels in front of a cross made from branches that he placed as a marker for Alvin's grave. Then he sits before the grave, staring at the ground with his blue eyes, now hollow and devoid of meaning. Someone asks how long he plans to keep that sorrowful expression. Shannon prepares to turn around, where he sees Alvin, telling him to cheer up. The ghost of Alvin crouches beside Shannon and gently strokes his hair. But the ghost vanishes shortly after, leaving Shannon speechless. The ground in front of the grave begins to dampen, because Shannon is crying profusely. Leo rests in the car when he notices a knock on the window. It's Shannon, and Leo sees his eyes swollen from tears. Shannon says Alvin died because of his identity. Chuan agrees, saying he won't say anything to make Shannon feel better, as Alvin's death is indeed his fault, and Shannon cannot choose his destiny. This kind of thing could happen again, and if Shannon doesn't want it to, he must become strong enough to change his own fate and the fate of those around him. Shannon nods and Leo tells him to get in the car. Shannon opens the passenger door, taking one last look at the place where he grew up. He glimpses himself as a child, chasing after Alvin, both smiling as they played together. But they finally turn to look at the present Shannon in the car. They hold each other's hands, bidding him goodbye and waving at him. Shannon watches the vision with a sorrowful, empty expression, then turns, entering the car, saying he will return to see Alvin again. Shannon recalls that in that moment, he felt his body overtaken by someone else, and he could only watch, powerless. That person had the same face as him but wielded powers that even Espers feared. If Shannon had been like that person from the start, Alvin might still be alive. Shannon quickly notices his thoughts, and wonders when he began thinking such pathetic things. Chuan drives through the Exile Zone, where everyone watches the car suspiciously, wondering where it's going. Chuan says he's looking for a place. Shannon asks about it, and Chuan replies he's choosing a building with a good view to be his base, adding that Shannon needs proper clothes too. The car stops, and Shannon nearly stumbles. In front of a red building, Chuan declares this will be the spot and tells Shannon to get out. A man with a gun asks which faction they belong to, and Shannon informs Chuan that this is Black Bear territory. The Black Bear faction traffics prosthetic materials and resources illegally. Chuan asks why Shannon fears a mere bear, and Shannon replies that they are the Black Bear. Leo points at Shannon, telling him to wait there because his task is to protect himself. Then, Leo charges into the building with electricity, sweeping through everyone inside. Shannon marvels at his incredible speed. The entire building seemed to be short-circuiting due to the overwhelming electricity emanating from it. Shannon watches in surprise at Chuan's actions. Then an explosion occurs, breaking parts of the building and causing it to collapse. People run away, shouting that an Esper was there. Shannon shields himself, coughing from the dust. He soon notices Chuan at a window, motioning for him to come up, and Shannon nods. Entering the building, he finds the streets outside deserted after the chaos caused by Chuan. People in the alley whisper about the special grade man in the Exile Zone, surprised to see an Esper and a black ring together. They quickly decide to inform their boss about what just happened. In the jurisdiction area, at the Dead Alive Club, several investigators are inspecting a truck. A girl is brought out chained. The investigators take her to the guard whom Chuan had injured earlier. The girl kneels before the guard and uses her ability on his head. She retrieves the injured man's memories. A woman appears behind her, asking if she saw the attacker, and the girl nods. She describes him as having purple hair, a golden ring, and rare electrical powers. The people question her, but she confirms it. The investigator says they should take the girl back to the lab, and an agent grabs her hand, pulling her along. The girl notices something, but the agent orders her to move quickly and not delay. She apologizes but soon witnesses the man being killed. Outside, the investigator comments that young Master Leo is challenging the 8 families. When asked about the black ring, she says they should simply report it. The woman adds that she already understands the useless families are beginning to make their moves, and the man asks about Wendy's confidants. Shannon walks down a blood-red path. He sees Alvin's arm and hears voices calling him to save them, addressing him as IU. Shannon runs, terrified, but finds himself face-to-face with the Esper who controls telekinesis, calling him trash and useless. The Esper accuses him of being the disgrace that caused his friends' deaths. Shannon finally wakes up, startled and trembling from the nightmare he just experienced. He realizes it was only a dream, and Leo asks if he's finally awake. Shannon asks why Chuan is watching the TV on mute, and Leo questions if it isn't obvious. Chuan turns up the volume to maximum. The news reports on the investigation of the Esper attack at the arena, showing a glimpse of the crime scene. Shannon notices it's already dark and asks how long he's been asleep. Leo replies that it doesn't matter and that Shannon can sleep more, as he won't have many chances to rest like this in the future. Shannon asks if those hunting him will arrive soon, and Chuan responds that they could come at any moment, asking if he's afraid. The boy reflects on his fear. He remembers living in the Exile Zone, where he never had the hope of a long life from the start. He had never thought about seeing tomorrow or hoped to live another day. Yet the desire to live this life is painfully insatiable. Sometimes, though, there's something beautiful that makes him want to keep living. Shannon remains seated, lost in thought. Leo asks what he's daydreaming about. Shannon admits that Chuan is strong but asks how he'll deal with so many enemies. Chuan looks at him and laughs. He asks who told Shannon he was the only one on Chuan's side, leaving Shannon puzzled. Chuan shows him a phone displaying a temporary group that marked their current location, visible to 4 people. Chuan says he's curious about their choice, whether they'll honor their 18-year-old promise to protect Shannon or ignore him and possibly side with the Leo family. Shannon asks about their choice and if they're not allies. Leo explains that 6 families supported Wu Yu, who dreamed of a society without the rings. While Wu Yu advocated for this, others questioned how she would divide land with the inferiors. But her allies reminded them that this was a council chamber, not a place to vent grievances. Wu Yu finally stood before the council. The Lin family questioned who exactly was the one venting in the chamber. Later, the Lin family and others without ranks went to war, and Wu Yu foresaw the crisis. She called upon her parents, who met Shannon while feeding him as a baby. She says she understood the request was selfish and dangerous but begged everyone not to forget their mission. She promised that the Espers would destroy the world, and in 18 years, it would reach its peak. The inside and the outside would become 2 completely different worlds. This was the result of Esper powers running unchecked. On that day, Wu Yu asked them to help her child when the war began. She said her son would fall asleep and, once awakened, would bring society back into proper order. Embracing her son, she pleaded for their help, explaining that after the failure of the initial battle, the special grade families had gained more control over the rings and were abusing their power. Miss Wu Yu was captured by the Leo family, who ordered the destruction of everything tied to her. The 8 families reorganized their ranks, and the Leo family isolated those loyal to Wu Yu. They monitored every movement, and for the next 18 years, their descendants carried out a significant mission in public, pretending to sever ties. Because of this, they couldn't contact each other directly. Otherwise, the Leo family would uncover their intentions. After 18 years, they wondered how the protection plan had persisted. Chuan reflects that it doesn't matter because he's prepared to face anyone who comes. Shannon says he feels like he's let everyone down. Leo says the child of prophecy, supposedly divine tier, is ordinary and disappointing. But he won't back down now, and Shannon understands his resolve. He thanks Chuan as he stands up. He says Chuan must be hungry and offers to find something for them to eat, heading toward the door. Inside the warehouse, he closes the door and stays there. Then he collapses, falling to the floor and sighing. He begs his hand to stop trembling. He remembers the words, once awakened, he will change the social order to its rightful state. Shannon recalls everything he has lived through, from running in the rain with a box over his head, to the time people tried to steal his organs, how he escaped, wounded all over, or even when number 2 beat him during the elimination match. He tells himself he's not the child destined to save the world because he couldn't even protect himself. But he remembers the man calling Alvin a standard piece of trash, and he says he can't stand that. He doesn't know how many espers are after him and doesn't have time to hesitate. He needs to pull himself together, and with that, the ground begins to shake violently, as if an earthquake were happening. Shannon performs a few acrobatics and stands firm in the warehouse. Then a burst of fire invades the ground, destroying the warehouse. Shannon is stunned by the flames spreading around him and wonders about their source. But Leo Chuan says Zenia had come there and turned against them. Shannon manages to dodge all the bursts of fire aimed at him. He realizes the flames are targeting him specifically and wonders how, as they must have pinpointed his location quickly, yet he hasn't seen any attacker. He questions whether the fire can track his presence while hiding behind a cabinet. But the fireball keeps advancing. It splits into 2, and Shannon wonders how that's possible. The flames hit the cabinet he's hiding behind, but Shannon thinks he must do this for Leo Chuan. However, he contradicts himself, saying he can't focus on protecting others. He grabs the cabinet and tells himself he needs to keep going. He hurls it toward the fire. The fire splits into several smaller flames that hover around Shannon. The boy thinks he's had enough of this as the flames try to hit him. He notices the fire is tracking his movements and realizes he must prevent it from sensing his presence entirely. If he cancels his presence and makes a quick move to find the source of the flames, he might capture the person controlling them. With a smirk, he says it will work. As the flames close in on Shannon, he looks at them and reflects that Alvin was right. He can't hide to win. Stepping into the flames, he says he must face them head-on. The flames engulf the entire warehouse in an explosion. The flames return to the woman controlling them. She believes his presence has vanished and is fading away. But when she turns around, she notices something intriguing. Shannon is standing behind her, saying he's finally found her. The two face each other as smoke still rises from Shannon, thanks to the flames hurled at him. But Shannon realizes he hadn't thought about what to do after finding her. The woman approaches him, her red eyes glowing with intensity beyond anything he's ever seen. Then she says that Shannon had passed, leaving the boy confused. Leo Chuan was sitting in the room with his hands covering his face. But soon, he smiles beneath his hands. Shannon reflects on having passed. He could barely stand and didn't want to collapse in front of the woman at that moment, as she had finally acknowledged him. But Leo Chuan appears and grabs Shannon by his shirt. Shannon tries to thank Leo, but Chuan knocks him out with a blow to the neck, saying he needs to speak with Zenia, and she agrees. At home, Shannon is asleep on the couch while Zenia comments that he has incredibly fast reflexes. As the son of Wu Yu and possessing abilities, his future seems hopeless, and she expresses a desire to go home. Chuan disagrees, saying he doesn't think so because Shannon set up an ambush. He controlled his presence, noticed the flames, and pinpointed her location. Zenia remarks that she made it easy for him, but Chuan seems to hold her in high regard, asking if something had happened. Leo recalls the scene of Shannon using telekinesis and says there have been significant developments, and Zenia asks what they are. Chuan notes it has been 16 years since they last saw each other, and she seems to have been training hard. Zenia says the same about him while covering a scar on her neck. She teases Chuan, saying someone with a scar on their face has no right to talk about beauty. Chuan retorts that he had hoped for someone with a less sharp tongue, and Zenia asks whom he's referring to. A sparrow flies across the sky. It lands on a cherry blossom tree in the Celestial City, at the Council of the 8 Great Families. 2 investigators talk, remarking that it has been years since anyone set foot in the council, suggesting something significant is happening. One investigator laments Wu Yu's absence, noting that the hall now feels useless. He says the ghosts and espers of the families are searching for Shannon. A heavily bandaged man comments that he'd like to rip out the tongue of that loudmouth, and adds that's exactly what the woman beside him is thinking. The woman, annoyed, says it's irritating and reflects that he should stop talking, or she'll kill him. In the council hall, someone orders the files to be brought back, showing pictures of Shannon and Leo Chuan. A man takes the lead, manipulating something. He notes that Leo Chuan's ring test caused an uproar because his power is close to divine tier, making it impossible to confront him directly. A woman suggests sending the hybrids, as they'd kept the mixed breeds for this reason. She adds she's curious about how the child of divinity might taste, revealing herself as the representative of the Xia family. The representative of the He family remarks that the real issue isn't Leo Chuan but a girl, pointing to a picture of Zenia. All eyes turn to someone sitting in the corner of the table. The representative of the Leo family orders them to bring Shan Yu back alive and kill the girl. One of the representatives asks about Wu Yu's loyal families, noting they haven't made any moves yet. He mentions that Suyi, the blacksmith, disappeared 10 years ago, and the Su family claims to know nothing. Han Shu, a descendant of the Han family, lacks exceptional talent, but he's been bedridden for years, unable to fight. The man warns about Zhou Shi, who was disowned and sent to a monastery. He orders them to notify and prepare themselves, stating that they'll spare their lives if they cooperate, but anyone siding with Leo Chuan will be annihilated, and everyone agrees. Only 4 leaders remain in the room. The matriarch of the He family looks out the window, where the sparrow flies swiftly. The sparrow travels to the monastery. It lands on Zhou Shi's shoulder while he trains under a waterfall. It relays everything. Zhou Shi comments that the descendant of the Leo family has joined forces with Shannon, and Zenia is involved too. The sparrow attempts to say more but stops. Zhou Shi lifts it to his hand and listens to everything the bird conveys. The man tells them to leave, saying he can handle this alone, and departs with his sword in hand. But a representative watches him from beneath the water, using his esper powers. At the Su family's estate, a grand mansion stands. Inside, everything is eerily silent, from the modern hall to the empty courtyard. And finally, in the Su family's vault, where a representative of the Qin family emerges from the shadows, using his esper power. In a hospital, Han Shu lies asleep, receiving medication. But vines begin to form around his face, ready to pierce him at any moment. These vines sprout from a representative, resembling branches growing from the back of a spider. Shannon wakes up while Zenia and Chuan watch the outside of the house. The boy runs over and asks if there's an enemy, but Chuan replies it's nowhere near that. He reflects on whether everyone in the Exile Zone has such an inflated sense of self because they cannot be controlled merely due to their numbers. Hundreds of military trucks are outside, with Quentin questioning whether they could simply sit down and talk amicably. Shannon is stunned to see Quentin there, but Leo Chuan pushes Shannon back and says he has nothing to say to him. Quentin clarifies that it's not Chuan he wants, but the purple-haired child whom Chuan has taken under his wing in their black ring discussions. Shannon is surprised by Quentin's declaration. Afterward, Zenia asks Chuan if he's disappointed, and he confirms, asking if it's that obvious. Chuan had been expecting a real fight and asks about the enemies, while Zenia urges restraint. Quentin hadn't expected to see Shannon, but hearing about the base confirmed it was him. Shannon apologizes, and Quentin asks about his bodyguard. Shannon responds that Quentin wouldn't believe him, while Quentin's subordinates murmur about the conversation. Another subordinate comments that sending Quentin to the fort would be cruel. Shannon explains the situation, and Quentin asks if he is Wu Yu's son, destined to challenge the Celestial City. Shannon confirms and asks how Quentin knows about his mother since he hasn't mentioned her. The man asks if it's Shannon's first time leaving the Exile Zone. Quentin explains that everyone knows his mother's name, a forbidden word. He is surprised by Shannon's sincerity, and asks if he came to claim the base. Shannon replies that he's not scared because his intuition tells him Quentin is honorable and not as foolish as he seems. Quentin agrees, noting how quickly Shannon's eyes have changed. As a gesture of honesty, Quentin decides to share something about Shannon's mother, surprising him. Quentin recounts how, 10 years ago, he was working in the jurisdiction area on a secret construction project. The location of the structure was kept hidden, and all workers wore blindfolds until they arrived. During the work, Quentin got the impression they were building a prison. One day, he peeked into a room and realized it was a cell designed for a single person. He overheard someone saying the cell would soon be complete. It was a cell for divine tier individuals, and the executives merely nodded. Quentin speculates that Shannon's mother was imprisoned there, and if this is true, she is still alive. At the Su family estate, the representative continues searching the library. He realizes there is no living presence there. Becoming intangible, he phases through a wall, deciding it's time to leave. But he senses a room filled with energy. Upon entering, he finally notices something. He laughs and questions if this is really happening now as he sees someone connected to a machine with wires. He remarks that he thought the Su family had no descendants, yet there's one here. The descendant opens his eyes, and the representative asks if he has awakened. In the descendant's vision, he sees an unfamiliar figure as his memories begin loading, reaching 20%. Qinyan notices the descendant has no ring and that his existence is unknown, questioning who he is and his connection to Suyi. The descendant doesn't respond, and the memory loading reaches 70%. Qinyan demands to know if he's deaf, insisting he's speaking to him. Finally, the loading hits 100%, and the descendant stares intently at him. Qinyan is confused as he observes the descendant. The descendant then reveals his name, Qinyan. The representative is startled to hear this and looks up in shock. He demands to know how the boy knows his name. Charging toward the descendant, he demands answers. But the descendant simply moves his hand, releasing a surge of purple energy. The energy propels Qinyan away. Smoke begins to emanate from the Su estate. The boy finally frees himself from the wires binding him. Qingyan wonders how the boy could emit such shockwaves with his hand. He remarks that this ability belonged to Luo Xingguang, who is dead, and questions how a Su family descendant could have it. This contradicts everything they know, so he decides to inform the others and warn them to be cautious, as Wu Yu's followers are strong. However, the descendant releases a purple mist, taking Qingyan by surprise. Qingyan looks around, spitting blood, but sees nothing. The descendant appears behind him, placing his hands on Qingyan's back. Qingyan begs him not to do it. The boy simply says, "Bang!" releasing an immense burst of energy against him. Zhuoxi is dueling another representative who controls water. She fires water jets at Zhuoxi. He stands still with his sword. He effortlessly stops the water jets with his bare hands. He molds the water as if it were his own ability. He even forms water birds that attack the representative sent to hunt him. Finally, he turns the water into rain and tells her to blame herself for confronting him. The woman, incredulous, asks what had happened, as Zhuoxi neutralized her attack so easily. Zhuoxi simply moves his arm downward. He summons his sword to himself, and approaches the woman so quickly it seems like he teleported, leaving her unable to react. He strikes her with a series of punches and kicks in a kung fu style, launching her far away with swift and precise movements. Finally, he hurls her forcefully. The representative spits blood. Zhuoxi appears behind her with his sword. He unsheathes the blade and places it at her neck. She asks what ability he is using. Zhuoxi responds that he doesn't need abilities to fight the weak. At Zhuoxi's monastery, there is a giant Buddha statue. All the monks stand before it, chanting hymns and worship. They strive for a heart as pure as water, reflecting truth without distortion, free from worldly desires, so they may attain Buddha's Dharma body. After Zhuoxi cuts the woman with his sword, he stands by the waterfall, gazing at her. At the hospital, the representative has his vines pointed at Han Shu. The vines bind Han Shu's hands. The representative remarks that the intelligence was accurate since Han Shu truly has a powerless body. He wraps the vines around Han Shu's golden ring, commenting that it's a waste for someone like Han Shu to be a special grade esper. He begins piercing Han Shu's arm. Drops of blood finally hit the floor. He starts absorbing the blood from Han Shu's arm, laughing as his vines expand and gain vitality. He remarks that this sensation is nostalgic, as expected from a special grade. But he soon notices someone behind him. It's a girl who accidentally knocks over a basket of apples onto the floor. She orders him to step away from her older brother. The man asks what will happen if he doesn't, but the girl grabs his vines and charges at him. With a punch, she sends the representative flying. She rushes to her older brother. However, a vine appears and pierces her as well. It pins her to a wall, immobilizing her. The representative mocks her, calling her careless, while the girl writhes in pain from the wound in her shoulder. The representative grabs Han Shu with a branch and leaps out the window. The girl follows, leaping after him. She commands him to stop, using her ability to shatter the ground where he lands, only to notice someone speaking to the representative. It's her mother, who remarks that a ghost has appeared in her humble abode, saying that if she had been warned, she would have welcomed him properly. She asks why he makes things so difficult. The representative tells her to stop the charade. He says she's nothing more than a servant of Wu Yu, and he could report this to the Leo family. He warns her to leave if she values her life. He declares that they will capture Wu Yu's descendant, no matter the cost, and tightens his grip on Han Shu. The woman says she doesn't care about anyone's descendant, and orders him to put her son down. The man remarks that Han Shu is just a powerless body. He throws Han Shu into the air with his tree-like vines, challenging her to catch him if she wants him back. The girl watches the scene unfold. Her mother yells at the man, and the girl focuses on her brother. She leaps using her power, and catches Han Shu. The representative vanishes into thin air. The woman tells them not to pursue him and insists they return Han Shu to the infirmary, and her subordinate agrees. The subordinate suggests treating their wounds, but the girl questions why her mother ignored the Han family. She recalls how her brother once said that espers could make the world a better place, yet this man hurt her brother, and her mother treated him with respect. Her mother's expression remains unchanged as she looks at her daughter. The girl continues reflecting on her mother, and the subordinate advises her to return inside, warning that the walls may have ears. She says she understands and lowers her head, but she declares that she will finish what her older brother started. Her mother tells her she made two mistakes during the fight. First, she diverted her attention without ensuring the enemy was defeated, giving him the opportunity to harm her. Second, she hesitated in her decision-making. The girl asks if it really matters. Her mother says it doesn't, but that was her response. Back at the building, Shannon asks Quentin to describe the room in detail. Quentin asks if he's referring to the Divine Tier cage, and Shannon confirms. Quentin explains that it looked like a cell, with pillars near a sleeping capsule, and beneath the capsule was a pool of liquid resembling lava. Shannon lowers his head, and Quentin calls his name. The boy reflects on every word Quentin said about the cell. His face grows fearful as he processes the description. Suddenly, he hears a voice asking what he could do alone. It's his mother, standing before him. She appears distorted like a hologram, and asks him to give her the body. But Shannon replies that she isn't his mother. The woman admits he's correct. She reveals herself as a distorted version of Shannon, armed with a weapon, calling herself Shanyu. She then shoots toward Shannon's forehead. Quentin notices Shannon falling backward and calls out to him. He leaves the room, telling Chuan and Zenia to come in because something is wrong with the pink-haired boy. Zenia enters and tries to wake Shannon, who is unconscious. Meanwhile, Chuan recalls the scene of Shannon with black and blue eyes. Shannon's head remains tilted upward, his eyes still open. Shanyu grips Shannon's hand, commanding him to surrender the body and kneel. Shannon senses the immense power and watches Shanyu crouch as well. Shanyu taunts him, saying he was summoned because Shannon was powerless against the enemy. He calls Shannon a frightened cat and claims only he can win, demanding Shannon hand over the body. Shannon feels the pressure, exhales deeply, and acknowledges Shanyu's strength, unable to speak. Shanyu urges him to agree and calls him a coward, but Shanyu suddenly rises, saying someone is interrupting them. Shannon gradually opens his eyes, seeing Leo, Zenia, and Quentin in front of him, their powers activated. The only thing Shannon hears is Shanyu's voice, promising they'll meet again soon, before letting out a scream. He grabs Leo Chuan's arm, lowering his head, leaving everyone speechless. Shannon calls out to Leo Chuan. Leo asks why Shannon called him. Shannon requests Chuan to fight him. Chuan jokes that maybe he electrocuted Shannon too strongly, while Zenia checks his temperature, which is normal. Shannon insists he needs Esper powers and that fighting is the only way to awaken them, pleading with Chuan to fight him. Leo looks at Zenia, completely puzzled by Shannon's words. Zenia suggests Shannon is delirious, and Chuan agrees, adding that Shannon is not just delirious, he's insulting him. The woman says training isn't a bad idea, but Chuan should be cautious. Chuan replies that he'll defeat Shannon without expending energy. Quentin interrupts, saying he knows the perfect place for a fight. At a logistics station, the four gather. Zenia looks at them and recalls something. She tells Shannon to be careful and not die, but Shannon responds that's the point, only the threat of death will awaken his powers. He explains he needs to become stronger. Zenia reflects that she chose the right side. Leo stands in front of Shannon, hands still in his pockets, doing nothing. Shannon wonders where the attack will come from, long range or close range, but decides to stay calm and focus on observing Chuan's movements clearly. Chuan laughs, noticing Shannon's concentration. He says he'll create a battlefield environment for the fight, releasing electricity around his body. A sphere forms around them, acting as a shield, leaving Shannon impressed. Zenia complains about what just happened. She charges forward and punches the shield, but the electricity repels her, throwing her back. Zenia shouts for Shannon to step outside the sphere. Now, only Shannon and Leo Chuan remain inside. Leo tells Shannon to keep his eyes wide open because he's about to show him what a true Esper can do, emphasizing that he operates on a different level, and Shannon will have to adapt. Shannon steadies himself, maintaining his stance. But soon, he notices something unusual. Leo Chuan, who is at a distance, suddenly closes in with astonishing speed. He grabs Shannon by the head. Shannon, surprised, turns to face him. He questions how Leo moved so quickly. Before he can react, Leo strikes the ground with an electric attack. The impact throws Shannon far away. Shannon realizes that Leo is incredibly fast, to the point where it's impossible to follow his movements. Even though he's impressed, Shannon notices Leo used only one hand to attack him. Leo Chuan, smiling, challenges Shannon to continue, saying that they were just getting started. Outside the barrier, Zenia keeps trying to burn through it with her fire. Quentin observes and remarks that he has seen many Espers before, but Leo Chuan is on another level. Irritated, Zenia replies that this isn't the time for jokes or compliments. She reminds Quentin that Leo is considered the closest thing to a divine tier Esper the world has seen. 16 years ago, during the Esper evaluation exams, Zenia waited outside. She stood in front of one of the test rooms. Suddenly, a wave of electricity shot through the walls. The energy came from room 97. The phenomenon startled everyone around. People began murmuring about the absurd pressure emanating from that Esper. They speculated about who it could be. A screen appeared, showing the name, Leo Chuan, but it didn't reveal his Esper rank. The evaluation ring, usually quick, took time to process. It changed colors slowly. Finally, the ring settled on gold, causing an uproar among those present. Many began speculating that he might be a divine tier Esper, something unprecedented. The door to the room opened slowly, releasing smoke that mixed with the electricity in the air. Leo Chuan emerged from the room, surrounded by his energy, with a golden ring floating around him. While everyone applauded, Zenia watched, impressed, and prepared for her own test. She walked to the door, determined not to lose to him. Back in the present, Quentin questions Zenia. He asks if Leo Chuan was truly a prodigy. Zenia, worried, says her biggest concern is the risk of enemy attacks before the fight ends. Quentin decides to stand guard at the area's entrance, promising to alert Zenia at the first sign of danger. Shannon, injured inside the barrier, thanks God. He thanks God that Leo Chuan isn't his enemy. As he nearly loses consciousness, Shan Yu appears before him. He proposes a pact. Shan Yu taunts him, saying he should surrender his body to have a chance against Leo Chuan. Shannon recognizes Shan Yu and notices the sarcastic smile on his face. Shan Yu claims that Shannon is tired of being weak and that he craves power. He mocks Shannon further, calling him a coward, saying that if he refuses, he'll be captured and devoured by monsters. Despite the pressure, Shannon refuses to yield, declaring that Shan Yu will never possess him. In the past, in an Exile Zone, Alvin and Shannon watched members of the Little Cross faction. They were distributing bread. A man offered bread to the two of them. He said they could pay for it once they joined the faction. Shannon accepted, thanking him with a smile, while Alvin remained serious. Alvin explained that he didn't want to stay in that place, because he saw chaos spreading everywhere. He described how civilians ran through the streets, while armed factions took in women and children. The father of one of the children complained. He said he couldn't get in, and accused the faction of being worse than the bandits. Alvin commented that he didn't want them to become like those they swore to fight against. Shannon argued that the world was this way because of the Espers. Alvin interrupted, reminding him that he himself was an Esper. He demonstrated his powers by levitating a piece of bread. Even so, Shannon insisted that Alvin was different from the others. Alvin philosophized, questioning whether in a world without Espers there would still be bad people. Shannon replied that it would be impossible, but Alvin disagreed, comparing the situation to the bread they were holding. He explained that everything had been shared, but it ended up in the hands of powerful factions, corrupting the original good intention. Taking Shannon's bread, Alvin joked. He said Shannon should eat instead of saving it for later. Back in the present, Shannon declares that Shan Yu will never possess him. The illusion finally shatters. Shannon begins emanating a new energy. Leo Chuan observes Shannon's transformation with a smile. He realizes the fight is far from over. Shannon rises, challenging Leo Chuan again. He says it's not over yet. Leo smiles back, excited. He states that things are finally getting interesting. At the entrance to the jurisdiction area, a group of people with black rings around their necks observes the battle. They watch everything from a distance. On a bus, someone says they managed to rescue them. He explains that the injuries sustained by the ghosts were worse than expected, and that the situation is much more dire than they had anticipated. There were no clues about the attackers at the scene, which meant it was all like the Exile Zone, and the next step would be to investigate further. The person on the phone interrupts the guard. She says they wouldn't get that far. The hybrid unit would intercept them first. At the jurisdiction area gate, the group of hybrids moved together. A girl says the door was too slow. A man tells her to shut up. Another boy is communicating, speaking quietly. The guards wonder if they are prisoners. They also wonder if the jurisdiction area had ever detained black rings. But suddenly, one of the women disappears for a second. The girl reappears with a knife at a soldier's neck. Then she asks him where he was looking, while using some kind of Esper power against him. This makes the guard's glasses change color, from blue to pink. Then, the guard's face explodes. The girl starts stomping on him, asking if he wanted to look again. She tells him to keep staring while a policeman points a gun at her. But when he fires, the gun doesn't even work. One of the members tells Taya to stop playing around. It was time to work, he says. He says there's been a change of plans, and that he needed two of them to go to the jurisdiction area. The mission was to stop the special grade moving through the Exile Zone. The boy at the front asks who would go. Taya says she will, and the other bandaged man too. So, the two left that place. Meanwhile, a train was passing through the jurisdiction area, until a foot touched the surface of the roof. Shwashi was waving to the city as he ran. He was running quickly, as trains sped by him. The scientists inside a laboratory were working intensely, until Shwashi finally stopped in the city. He unsheathes his sword with just one finger, and prepares to cut something with precision. Shwashi was facing a massive building and several trains. In the warehouse, the bandaged man comments that they put a special to fight. He says that after surviving prison, winning quickly wouldn't be a problem. The boy grabs a crayon and draws something on the floor. He draws the figure of a person in the center of the drawing. With his pink eyes, the boy says the drawing is ready. Then, he begins to emit a bright pink light. The building starts to shake, trembling. Pieces of the building begin to fall apart to the ground. Shwashi wonders if the attack was coming from underground. Meanwhile, the scientists say it seemed like an earthquake. Everyone in the lab falls to the ground, frightened. They correct themselves, saying it wasn't an earthquake. It was the surrounding structures moving. Shwashi thinks it couldn't be like this. He carefully observes the building moving. He says there's no other way. Then, he takes his sword and prepares. He charges toward the moving building. This startles the birds flying nearby and causes some debris to fall. Shuishi says he doesn't have time to play hide-and-seek with it. He jumps with a green esper power. This makes him almost float in the air. The boy drawing on the floor thinks Shuishi wouldn't escape. But then, the building in front of him moves to the side. Shuishi quickly descends to avoid impact. He uses his agility and skills to dodge the buildings. Every time he tries to touch a building, it moves elsewhere. On the ground, Shuishi says he's back at the starting point. He observes the immense distance between the ground and the top of the buildings. On the bridge above, someone is hovering. It was the boy from the Su family, using flying boots. An energy alert appears on his leg, asking him to land. He begins descending slowly. As he descends, he notices a girl on the bridge. It was Taya, waving at him with a distorted vision. She tells him to come down. She calls him a robot, which surprises him. Outside the barrier, Zenia thanks Quentin for the warning. Zenia tells him to find a place to hide, saying she'll be fine. Then, she quickly hangs up the phone. Zenia removes one of her hairpins. She says it's annoying and that she hates people who talk too much. Zenia observes the group of people in the warehouse. They just laugh at Zenia. She also smiles, asking who would like to die first, or if they would like to fight her as a group, as she didn't mind, and the girl with purple hair said she talked too much. So, Zenia thinks she needs to hold them off until Shannon's ability activates. Because if he awakens, he will probably have some telekinesis from his mother. And the weakness of these espers is very obvious. Because when a real fight begins, it will be up to Leo and Zenia to fight. One of the men says it's been years, but this fight seemed worse than he remembered, and the other boy agrees, with the girl saying it was nostalgic. Zenia notices that they are all black rings, and her father was right about something, 14 years ago. In the Pei family, Zenia thought she had 98 victories and only 2 defeats, reflecting that she might need to increase the simulation level. But she notices a light on in her house. She tells her father she would go inside, and her father agrees. He says she is growing up and cannot train day and night, so she must find balance. Zenia says she recovers quickly and does not want to lose to her father. Her father says she still has a sharp tongue, and Zenia replies that the tea was hot, but every time she came there, the tea was cold. The head of the Pei family simply agrees while Zenia holds the tea, until she notices a paper with the name of the Leo family. Her father drinks his tea while looking at the girl. Zenia asks where they had hidden Miss Wuyu. Her father says he wishes he knew the answer, sitting there, enjoying the tea his daughter prepared. His happiness came at the cost of Wuyu's freedom. Zenia falls silent after hearing this. Her father changes the subject and asks if she recognizes the car insignia, and Zenia says it belongs to Celestial City but is in the Exile Zone. Her father says she is correct and intercepted them in the Exile Zone. Recently, the 8 families had been very active and were constantly capturing black rings, and in just 2 weeks, they had already captured more than 1,000. Zenia questions the magnitude of this number, and her father wonders what they were planning with all those children. He had gone through every possibility, and they all led to a terrible conclusion. The children were being prepared to eliminate their generation. Meanwhile, the leader of that group says people are rude, ignoring their target like that. Another member asks who was the first to go off on a tangent. The same member says he would handle it, but the girl intervenes, saying that if Yao Guang entered the fight, it would be equivalent to bullying, and she didn't want a beautiful woman meeting a tragic end. So, she jumps towards Zenia, saying she would be different, because she would make her die beautifully. Zenia looks at her arrogantly, and says they'll see what she can do. Yao Guang says Leo Chuan and Shannon were trapped, while the man calls them cowards. Yao Guang asks about bombing. He says they would wait for Xiao Mei to take down Pei Zenia before acting, and then they would crawl to save their friend, splitting the team with Shannon for Yao Guang. Because he wanted to know who was stronger, the man closest to divine tier or those who absorbed a divine tier. Yao Guang looks at him coldly without answering. Inside the shield, Shannon gets up with Esper energy surrounding him, saying it was close, and for a second, Shan Yu had taken over again, but thanks to him, he could now see everything clearly. Leo Chuan asks what's with that scary look Shannon has at that moment. Shannon thinks he should name Shan Yu and suggests, Little Black, but Shan Yu takes over Shannon's body and slaps his face, then slaps his other cheek. Leo Chuan asks what he is doing, and Shannon realizes Shan Yu didn't like that name, so he shouts for Chuan to go ahead because he would take anything Chuan threw at him. Chuan advances with electricity, and Shannon thinks that was expected. Dodging, Shannon reflects he couldn't escape Chuan's original strength. He evades all the attacks, realizing that knowing Chuan's pattern changes everything. Chuan attacks with a punch, and Shannon reflects that, despite being a mere ant, his 18 years of effort were crucial for Shan Yu being there. Shannon retreats from Chuan's blows. He stops at the edge of the shield, thinking Shan Yu should not appear and minimize his existence like this. Shannon finds himself tired, reflecting that it was his first time, but Chuan appears in front of him with a smile, and Shannon notices it is the first time someone other than Alvin comes to his side. only to be hit by a kick from Leo Chuan to his torso, saying it wasn't because of Shanyu but because of him. He stops in the middle of the kick's recoil. Gasping, he says he would take everything Leo Chuan had to offer. Chuan notices a difference in his eyes while still emitting electricity. Shannon reflects that Shanyu should stay quiet and watch, so he takes a step forward, because he would show how much he had grown, going all out against Leo Chuan, and delivering a strike that Leo Chuan blocks with a shield. Reflected by the blow, Shannon jumps behind Leo Chuan. Then, he attempts to strike his opponent. Leo Chuan notices Shannon's hand approaching him, and grabs his wrist, releasing electricity. Thus, Shannon is thrown forward with a blow, which makes him fall to the ground without even being able to defend himself. Chuan creates several chains that pin Shannon to the ground as he remains above him. Leo Chuan tells him he wouldn't have been able to dodge that attack if his Esper ability hadn't been activated, asking if Shannon was capable of seeing the future. Outside, Zenia rejects Xiaomei's proposal, and the girl says she didn't have to be so harsh, as she had never heard such a thing before. Because they needed to capture Shannon, the son of the divine level, and kill Pei Zenia, questioning why the 8 families wanted the life of an advanced level, since she wasn't even a special grade but merely a silver level, questioning whether the families held a grudge against Zenia, asking if there was something truly special about Zenia. Zenia repeats the word, mere. Then her flames awaken with a face of madness, where she questions who was a mere silver ring. Xiaomei apologizes for saying that out loud, but Zenia unleashes a massive fireball against Xiaomei, which completely catches her off guard, leaving the purple-haired girl speechless. Xiaomei asks if she really had to kill the mood. Zenia says it's strange because she had clearly aimed for her head. Xiaomei charges at Zenia, saying to cut the talk and finish this quickly. Zenia moves her wand downward and reflects that she should show what those people were made of. But Xiaomei simply dodges all the fire blasts, keeping a sinister smile on her face, provoking Zenia, telling her to make her aim work. Zenia becomes extremely enraged, and the vein on her neck begins to bulge with her face full of hatred. Thus, Xiaomei tries to hit her face, but Zenia simply blocks with her arm. Xiaomei tries to grab Zenia's arm with her fingers, trying to land several punches on the girl to hurt her, but all are blocked by Zenia using only physical combat. Zenia then grabs Xiaomei's arm with her own, and throws her to the side, moving her arm, with an attempt at a downward strike, which Xiaomei dodges with relative ease, and counters with an attempt to kick Zenia in the face, then trying to grab her leg, but being thrown backward by Zenia's fire. The fire reaches her back, but Xiaomei dodges the flames, somewhat surprised by the attack. She says she understands how she feels about the painful sense of inferior life forms. Zenia delivers a blow against her, telling her to shut her mouth, and Xiaomei dodges, laughing. Yao Guang adjusts and loads his weapon, but Zenia notices this attempt at an attack, and thus conjures her fire, summoning a barrier, saying she wasn't the type of person to attack from behind, especially while sitting in the audience. The hybrid leader laughs and says Yao Guang's scheme had been exposed. Yao Guang silently looks at Zenia's fire, then he drops his weapon, his hand faltering. Xiaomei dodges all the fire columns, and stomps on the ground, charging forward, getting close to Zenia and saying this would be an unforgettable story of 2 scars, touching her face and using her Esper power, telling her to listen to this. But she is completely stopped by a horizontal fire column rising, separating the 2 girls. Xiaomei steps back and questions where Zenia had gone, but Xiaomei is startled by Zenia calling her, "You," asking if she had just spoken. Zenia prepares a strike while reflecting, apologizing to Shannon because she wanted to buy him time, but she'd like to finish this quickly, unleashing a fire explosion, and saying Xiaomei had made her angry. A burst of fire is released towards Xiaomei, which approaches her as if they were several red needles, and an explosion occurs at the spot where she was. As soon as the smoke begins to clear, Zenia asks how she feels, revealing Xiaomei completely injured by her fire bursts, and saying she had been defeated by a mere silver ring. Xiaomei opens her mouth, panting and injured, but soon turns that panting expression into a smile, saying she hadn't had this much fun in ages, considers Pei Zenia the strongest of the silver rings and says she likes her. Zenia remains silent upon hearing all these arrogant phrases from Xiaomei. Thus, Shimei is consumed by Zenia's fire that spreads across the ground. Her companions watch the entire battle from a distance. The child calls out to her sister Shimei, but Yao Guang tells Dudu not to worry because that was Shimei's way of showing off. Tian Lang asks why Dudu is so concerned about this, and the child reflects that he doesn't like Tian Lang. But Tian Lang says that Pei Zenia is already dead. In an analysis room, some scientists are monitoring screens. One of them says they've lost security from camera B313 in the East Wing. He orders someone to check the area, and one of them informs Roger that he's heading there now. Roger tells him to be cautious, as it was a successfully mutated child. Entering a hall filled with cells, one of them glows red. The guards approach the glowing cell and order the boy inside to wake up, calling him a brat. They enter the cell and find the boy lying down. One of the guards tries calling him again, but he remains motionless. The boy, with cold yet frightened eyes, waits for the right moment. Then, he lunges at the guard's neck while the other points a gun at his face. The injured guard demands the boy get off him while the other keeps his aim steady. The boy tears off the guard's ear and demands the access card. The guard with the weapon hands over the card, but as the boy tries to grab it, gunshots echo from outside the room, escalating the tension. A female employee of the organization descends in an elevator with a dead body. Other staff members carry the bodies of children as well, killing all hybrids who rebelled against the guards, imprisoning them and eliminating any resistance without hesitation. The employee finally reaches the lowest floor, where she exits with the body on a stretcher. She takes it to a room where 2 guards are leaving with empty stretchers. Scientists analyze the body and comment that the experiment was successful, expressing satisfaction. The doctor confirms the experiment's success, and the analyst orders the boy from room B313 to be incinerated, calling him a bad omen. One of the scientists protests, saying that after hundreds of black rings killed, they achieved a mutation, yet they eliminate it without a second thought. The doctor asks if he knows how long the incinerator in sublevel 2 has been active. It has been burning day and night for a decade since the facility was built. Over time, people have become cruel, killing like madmen without showing mercy. After all, the black rings were too naive, thinking that gaining powers would change their fate. In the end, they would never escape that cruel and dark place. Nor could they ever be free because a black ring would always remain a black ring. Meanwhile, the body burns in the incinerator, marking the end of another life. Shimei crouches before Zenia's fire blasts, trying to withstand the attack. Zenia approaches and tells her to use her precious ability and fight back. Looking at Shimei's body, she notices scars scattered all over her. Shimei coldly responds, asking who said she wasn't using her ability. Zenia mocks her, saying the air smelled bad, questioning if that was Shimei's ability. But soon, she notices something within her body that unsettles her, bringing uncertainty. Feeling a purple weapon-like energy near her, it injures her arms and legs without warning. Marks appear on Zenia's body, and she wonders how this is possible, fearing the worst. She collapses to the ground, her hairpin falling with the impact. Now kneeling before Shimei, the flames around her dissolve. Shimei stands up, panting, still shaken by the intense and difficult fight. She approaches Zenia and says that she made her kneel for too long, and now it was her turn. But Zenia spits blood, saying no, as her neck turns a shade of purple. Flowers glow beside Zenia like a poisoned aura, casting a somber atmosphere. She recalls when Shimei touched her leg, reflecting on that moment. When she touched her shoulder, her arm, and finally her face. Zenia questions if Shimei's great power is poisoning people upon touch, but Shimei denies this. Because if that were all she could do, she wouldn't be able to take Zenia's life, showing confidence. She then touches the girl's shoulder, and begins explaining her ability with clarity. Yaoguang reflects that this is Shimei's power and hers alone, admiring her strength. Shimei says her power is aging, revealing the truth about her ability. And Yaoguang thinks it's an extremely deadly ability, recognizing its lethality. When he was a child and had to cut his hair, he remembers Shimei by his side. He stood facing Shimei, who was also having her head shaved in silence. Both stared at each other quietly, not speaking, just sharing the moment. While taking baths, they suffered through the cold water, enduring the hardship together. A guard asks Shimei about the marks on her skin, questioning if it was some deadly infection. He calls the girl disgusting afterward, hurting her self-esteem with cruel words. Yaoguang watches her with pain, feeling the weight of the injustice she suffered. But Shimei suppresses her anger, hiding her feelings to protect herself, until she looks at the boy with an expression of extreme rage, revealing her true fury. In a room, the selected ones in the advanced birth program are congratulated, explaining that there they could change their destinies. The mutation experiments would reveal each one's potential, promising an escape from poverty. The guards observe the children in silence, remaining impassive in the oppressive environment. The presentation claims that the most successful mutations would guarantee access to the celestial city. Yaoguang questions Tian Lang if it's just brainwashing. Tian Lang, with golden eyes, watches the presentation, ignoring his friend's question. Yaoguang turns his gaze to Shimei and wonders about the mysterious girl. Shimei stares at him coldly, showing no interest in interacting. Memories flood Yaoguang, and he remembers the girl's name. In the cafeteria, Yaoguang feels a different presence as someone grabs his shoulder. With a stake pointed at him, Shimei asks why he stares at her like she's a monster. She threatens to rip his eyes out, showing her anger. Tian Lang intervenes, grabbing the stake and preventing something worse. A guard grabs Shimei, electrocuting her and ordering her to stop the commotion. The guard announces that the experiments would begin in an hour and instructs them to eat. The boys remain silent, while Shimei tries to regain her strength. Yaoguang approaches and asks if she can get up. Shimei slaps Yaoguang's hand away, telling him not to touch her, and runs off. Tianlang watches and comments that Shimei must be from the Silver Fox faction. After the mutation serum is administered, the guards organize the children into designated chambers. Shimei stands in front of Yaoguang, who apologizes for touching her without permission. She remains silent but finally tells him to survive, and he agrees. 2 guards climb the stairs, commenting on the hectic night. In the control room, one of them falls asleep while screams echo from the chambers. Bloody handprints mark the doors, reflecting the children's suffering. They screamed and sweated, some manifesting energy while others died. Shimei endured the pain in silence, surrounded by black and reddish energy. The operator suggests cutting the sound, and the screams are silenced. In Yaoguang's wing, Tianlang calls for his friend, waiting for a response. Yaoguang opens his golden eyes with a star, but the glow quickly fades. He responds to Tianlang, saying he's fine despite being exhausted. Tianlang jokes that it'd be pathetic if Yaoguang died early, and they laugh quietly. Yaoguang goes to Shimei, calling her name to check if she's alive. Shimei raises a finger, indicating she's still conscious. Yaoguang silently thanks her but notices the guards approaching. They comment that only 3 children survived: Tianlang, Yaoguang, and Shimei. The guards head toward Shimei's cell, with one warning not to take risks. The other, ignoring the warning, enters the cell with a malicious smile. Suddenly, the guard begins aging rapidly, alarming the others. His body ages and disintegrates as reinforcements are called for the West Wing. Shimei smiles disturbingly, while Yaoguang reflects on the falsehood of everything. Even surviving, he realizes the promises of a better future were lies. In the present, Shimei holds Zenia in her arms, calmly touching her chest. The young lady from the Han family is at home, aiming a stone at a camera. She aims precisely at the camera's point, saying it's easy, and throws it at the camera, causing an explosion she didn't expect. Thus, the pillar holding the camera breaks, but the camera remains intact, facing the Han family's young lady directly. In the garage, she tries the 6-digit code, but all attempts fail, forcing her to wait 10 minutes. Impatient, the girl punches the garage door several times, lifting the gate and pulling its cable out afterward. But she clutches her shoulder, noticing her injuries aren't fully healed and it still hurts, though it's no time to feel pain. She stands before the family's garage, filled with luxurious and antique cars. She sees an old car and says she remembers it. But a monkey-shaped structure behind the car suddenly lights up its right eye in red. A maid watching the scene with her mother on the camera says her lady had stolen a phone and now a car, questioning if she was heading to the Exile Zone. She notes it is a completely dangerous area and insists they must stop the girl in the garage immediately. However, the Han family leader says she needs to calm down, explaining that her daughter doesn't act with clarity. The maid relaxes and admits she panicked, forgetting that the cars are equipped with the Su family system, which only she and the young master could use. But she notices her lady typing and asks if she intends to do something. At that moment, the Han family leader presses "Enter" on her keyboard. Miss Han is inside a car trying to manually hotwire it, thinking about connecting the 2 wires as she had learned in a movie. But the old car's doors open beside her, surprising her. Han Shu's authorization is transferred to Yoli, confirming that the car belongs to her brother. Yoli jumps excitedly between the cars, and the system confirms she is under 18. The autopilot mode activates, locking the doors and prompting her to fasten her seatbelt. Yoli complies, fastening the seatbelt and accepting to view her brother's destination. The system displays a point on the map connected to the Han family wilderness system. Yoli notices that it is the Exile Zone and wonders if her mother had set the destination for her to go there. The system asks if she wants to change the destination, but Yoli says no and instructs it to take her there. The system acknowledges. It responds by stating it is at her service and starts moving, startling Yoli, who orders it to slow down. But the system car accelerates quickly, prompting Yoli to question whether the system knows how to drive. The system replies it is still learning to drive. The maid asks if her madam isn't the least bit worried since her lady had never been away from her side before. But the Han family leader keeps looking downward. She recalls a children's song sung to her while she was pregnant. Miss Han asks Wu Yu where she learned that song, and Wu Yu says it is popular online, continuing to sing. Wu Yu says Han Shu must go out into the world safely because his mother is waiting for him. Miss Han smiles at Wu Yu as she looks at her. Then, she begins to remember herself shouting. At the moment she meets Wu Yu before their separation. Wu Yu says something to her, but her memories are too hazy. Han Shu makes an angry expression. Then, she slaps Wu Yu across the face, and yells that she will hate her for eternity. The maid asks if everything is all right with her madam, and she replies it is nothing but old memories resurfacing. But she knows they can change the future. She says she believes in her daughter while holding her wrist tightly. Han Yoli crosses the Celestial City Bridge in that old car, heading toward the jurisdiction area. When she enters the city, The girl is amazed by what she sees. She looks out at the city, admiring everything through her window. But then she turns forward, reminding herself she is not there for fun. That is no longer the old jurisdiction area. It now belongs to bad people. Han Yoli turns on her phone and sends a message in a temporary chat group. Yoli, 14 years old, Han Shu's sister, introduces herself and says her mother sent her to help, calling Leo Chuan and pays Zenia her brother and sister. She sends the audio message to the group, holding her phone anxiously. She thinks about how the message has finally been sent. As she admires the view through her window, she wonders if her mother forgot to say goodbye to her. Looking at the giant buildings in the jurisdiction area, she continues observing the city through the window, until she picks up her phone again, feeling embarrassed. But there are no new messages on her phone yet. The system informs her that the chat shares everyone's location and that Wilderness recommends checking the two members' locations. Embarrassed, Yoli asks the system to do so. Opening the GPS, Wilderness states there are two individuals with locations close to the car. One of them is very familiar to Wilderness. Yoli notices an error in the system and calls out to Wilderness. Thus, the car speeds up, overtaking everyone on the street, and Yoli questions where Wilderness is taking her. But they were heading toward the bridge where the robot was fighting Taya. Meanwhile, back at the building where Shushi was battling, the boy with scars on his face, named Chi-Si, sends a message to the group saying he completed Yao Guang's mission, but no one replies in the group. Since Chi-Si had arrived there, however, he felt a chilling shiver running down his spine. Still, everything should be fine because Shushi hadn't moved an inch, and it had been easy to defeat him. But he wonders how long it's been since he stayed like that and notices crows hitting his window, surprising Chi-Si. He gets startled and moves to face the window, where several birds are hitting the glass. He panics, saying it's impossible. When he sees Shushi jumping through the window while drawing his sword, Shushi walks calmly toward Chi-Si. Chi-Si looks at his drawing and questions Shushi. He asks how he managed to escape his trap. Shushi says he chose to ambush in a factory without espers nearby because his ability relies on sensing energy, calling it a small experiment. But apparently, he was right, as he points his sword at Chi-Si's neck. The boy asks what that thing in his senses was. Shushi says it was his sock puppet, which was a fusion of multiple crows. Inside the building, there was a hole running through it, cutting through several walls occupied by scientists who only wanted to leave the place, and Chi-Si realizes that's how he escaped. Shushi says it's his turn to ask questions, asking how many of them there are, why he's the only one there, and where the others are. And finally, how Black Rings could use Esper abilities. Chi-Si reflects that he wouldn't answer just because Shushi asked, and says monks aren't allowed to kill. But Shushi moves his sword closer to his neck and tells him to answer. Chi-Si accepts defeat and wonders which question he should answer first. The boy touches the floor and says he'd be happy to tell Shushi everything, asking if he had time to listen. Then, Shushi notices a tremor coming from the window. When he looks back, a building is collapsing to the ground, while Chi-Si presses his hand to the floor and releases his Esper power. The ground shifts to move Chi-Si, who questions whether the monk would chase him for answers or return to help the Black Rings. As time waits for no one, Shushi remains silent, watching Chi-Si, but soon moves with the sparrows, saying he would leave. While fleeing, Chi-Si calls Taya, who asks what it is because she's busy, and the boy says there's been a change of plans, and he's heading to meet her now. Taya is in a frantic fight with the robot, swinging her sword against its arms and questioning the change. The girl reflects that he should just say he's running and not sugarcoat it, telling him to come if he wants but not to interrupt her fun, and she says she'll continue as she lowers the phone. The robot defends the attack with its arm, and Taya questions how long it will hold. But warnings appear for the boy, stating that his mother's core activation failed and there was a signal interference. Meanwhile, Shushi soars high in the sky, accompanied by his birds, who follow his orders precisely. He instructs them to escort the Black Rings carefully, ensuring they're taken to a safe place where no one can reach them. Shushi fully trusts his birds, believing they are the only ones capable of performing this task with the required discretion and security. Thus, he moves forward, facing the completely deconstructed building. Shushi advanced with the birds, rescuing all the civilians inside, using his extreme speed to save them before the building collapsed, from civilians trapped under pillars, appearing at the scene and rescuing them effortlessly, even helping those shaken by the structure's fall. Together with his birds, he assisted in saving them, conducting a thorough sweep of the entire building. But in the basement, some scientists were trying to push the door together. However, to no avail. One of them says something is jamming the door from the outside and that it won't open at all. Thus, they were trapped on that underground floor. The scientists panic, saying they don't want to die, looking for other exits, like windows, but with no success, as they were also sealed, and time was running out. However, a man near the door hears a sound and asks if the others can hear it too. There were birds chirping outside the door. Soon, these birds invade the room, and the civilians wonder if the birds had come to save them. The birds try to pull everyone to safety using their beaks. They even carry people out of the building. With the entire factory now cleared, all the civilians are left outside the building. Then, the building begins to prepare for a full collapse. Shuishi arrives carrying someone in his arms, asking a civilian to take care of him, who thanks him profusely. But a mother lying on the ground wonders where her son, Xiaoqiu, is. She says she must find her Xiaoqiu, as he is still inside the factory. Another civilian remarks that she shouldn't have brought a child to the factory. The mother asks what else she could have done, as she couldn't let him die in the exile zone. The building starts to crumble. The mother begins to cry, but she is interrupted by someone asking where he is. It is Shuishi, who questions where exactly her son is. The mother, surprised, says he is in the basement storage room. Shuishi vanishes in a green flash. One of the birds pulls at the collar of his shirt, accompanying him. But Shuishi pets the bird's head, reassuring it that everything will be fine. He enters the crumbling structure. Inside a room, Xiaoqiu wonders if anyone is out there. The storage room is flooding with water. The boy climbs onto a shelf to escape the rising water. He reflects that if he keeps climbing, he will drown. So he must find a way to the first floor. He tries to reach the ceiling. He cries, thinking that his mother is still waiting for him. He manages to grab onto a piece of the ceiling that remains intact. But the piece breaks, causing the boy to lose balance. He falls into the water filling the storage room. The boy struggles to reach the surface, calling for help and thinking of his mother. Only his hand remains above the water, as he pleads for anyone's help. Then, Shuishi's presence fills the room. He quickly grabs the child in his arms. He lifts him out of the water while swimming himself. Out of the aquatic danger, Shuishi places the child with his head resting on his shoulder. Outside, Xiaoqiu's mother kneels, waiting for her son as the birds hover in the air. She cries, scared of losing her child. Meanwhile, the birds circle the building, until one of them spots something with its eye. An explosion bursts from a pile of debris, and Shuishi's sword emerges shortly after. Shuishi successfully saves Xiaoqiu and escapes the wreckage. The young man asks for the child's name, and he introduces himself as Xiaoqiu. Shuishi pats the boy's head, telling him not to worry, as he is safe now. Xiaoqiu thanks him. The young man asks if Xiaoqiu can make it to the open area on his own because he has to leave. Xiaoqiu says he can. Shuishi pats his head again, calling him very brave. He vanishes along with his green wind. The boy is left alone, calling out to his big brother. On the bridge battlefield, Taya and the robot are locked in a frantic exchange of blows. The system informs the robot that it is experiencing malicious external damage and reconstructing information. When Taya tries to strike it with her sword, it blocks with its hands, stating it will repeat its primary objective. Taya laughs, calling it cursed. She says it's really tough, but the robot's primary objective is Shannon and Wuyu. Taya draws a pistol and asks what it thinks about trying this instead. Su Zhan warns Taya to cease her attack and leave, stating that the warning is final and will not be repeated. But Taya asks what will happen if she refuses. Su Zhan states that, with the exception of Shannon and Wuyu, all other espers have full elimination authorization. He then prepares a cannon that releases a beam from his hand. But it has no energy, and he states that the hand unit's power failed to activate. He tries to use various powers, from levitation to mist, even repair and movement, but all fail to activate. Su Zhan declares that his core energy activation has failed and initiates a hostile esper ability analysis. Taya just laughs. She says it's useless because she is its worst nightmare, pointing the pistol at Su Zhan. He identifies her ability as mechanical nullification. A warning appears, alerting that a shutdown would occur due to immobility. Taya then shoots at Su Zhan, and the shutdown countdown begins, counting down to 3, then to 2, and finally to 1. But Su Zhan manages to stop the bullet with his hand for some reason. Now his eyes, instead of pink, were black, and he lets go of the bullet with his hand. But the system shuts down immediately afterward. Taya says that was expected. Coming from the secret weapon of Master Suyi, a forging prodigy, Taya moves behind Su Zhan and says that a weapon master like Suyi wouldn't mind if she took parts of Su Zhan to study the structure. But she didn't care about a dead man anyway, grabbing the cables behind Su Zhan and preparing to rip them out. Yoli orders Wilderness to open the door. The system alerts interference in the signal, but she commands it to increase speed. Taya wonders what is interrupting her and looks back. But she only notices tire marks as Wilderness warns that proceeding in auto-drive mode would be impossible. Yoli apologizes to her companion and says he'll have to endure it for now. She then opens the car door and prepares to jump out. At the same time, Leo Chuan repeats to Shannon that he wouldn't have dodged if his Esper ability hadn't been activated, asking if he could see the future. Shannon calls out to Leo Chuan, but says no, and Chuan asks what. However, Shannon is having a vision, in which Leo Chuan is pierced by some sort of ability, dying as he looks at Shannon, who is left horrified, apart from everything happening. Then, screaming as he sees Leo Chuan die, Shannon panics and yells at Chuan, saying he must not go outside under any circumstances. Chuan wonders what he saw. Shannon says that he would die, saying that Leo Chuan would die outside, but Chuan simply slaps him, saying it seems his ability hasn't fully awakened yet. Shannon insists, saying he didn't make a mistake and saw it, even if just for a second. Therefore, no matter what, Chuan must not go. But Leo Chuan only smiles, and stands up, asking if it would really happen. Then, the chains begin to dissolve. He wonders what they were waiting for because he couldn't wait to go outside and see if it would truly happen. Outside the shield, Ali asks about the chaos and hears that the fight has turned, and the girl with the silver ring is losing. He wonders what he missed and when it got this bad, telling Quentin to hurry up because, if he doesn't arrive soon, something extremely terrible will happen. Quentin delivers supplies in the Exile Zone, telling them to hold on because they'll arrive soon, while Ali reacts to the comment. An employee announces that the Black Bear faction is distributing free supplies on a first-come, first-served basis and suggests following them. The crowd is only after food, chasing them, running desperately, shouting for a share as well. Meanwhile, people in the alley say to go see what's happening up close. The employee warns Quentin that if the location of their supplies is leaked, his big sister will kill them and put their heads in jars. Quentin jokes that she would only do it with his head. The employee laughs at the plea for help to the Esper, while Quentin questions the defeat of Zenia and the Black Rings. Because if even a high-level Esper like her couldn't win, they would all meet the same fate, and the employee keeps trying to rally the crowd. Quentin hits the car and tells them to maintain maximum speed up ahead, fixing his hair and saying it doesn't matter. Meanwhile, Shimei places her hand on Zenia, saying she believes one of the most beautiful moments in life is the moment they die. Her group watches as she states that it's the only time things are truly fair after all, because not even the strongest Espers can cheat death. But Shimei apologizes, saying she forgot Zenia didn't have the strength to speak anymore. However, Zenia asks her something, surprising Shimei. She asks what she was going to say, but Zenia keeps questioning the girl's name. Zenia continues asking what Shimei's name is, even on her deathbed, but Shimei remains silent, and asks why it matters since Zenia is already dead. Yet Zenia hears a voice calling her name, and recognizes it as her father's voice. She was on a dark path surrounded by red wires, trying to respond to her father's call. Following the trail of wires that gradually turned whitish, she asked where her father was. However, only one wire remained red, creating a path for Zenia to follow. Following that path, she arrived at a countryside house where a sparrow perched in a tree. She woke up in a luxurious room, with only one arm dangling out of the bed, slowly opening her lazy eyes. The girl noticed a dragon symbol on the ceiling of the house. She got up, still tired, rubbing her face, but soon held her other arm and sighed in exhaustion. Looking to her side, she noticed something, wondering if she shouldn't continue wrapping herself in bandages even in the afterlife, while noticing some bandages on the table. Looking down, she realized she had survived. The girl prepared to get out of bed. She walked over to her broken hairpin on the table. Holding the two pieces in her hands, she stared at them. Her expression grew sad upon noticing they were broken. But her thoughts were interrupted when someone asked G-Man if he had fertilized the vegetable garden today. The maid accused Peiperin of being lazy, but he said he was waiting for the girl to wake up so he wouldn't scare her. Meanwhile, as they argued, Zenia slowly walked to the door. The maid with the hose said he hadn't lifted a finger for the garden all week. Zenia observed the entire argument from the doorway, noticing everything that had happened. The maid, a silver ring Esper, was pulling the ear of a special grade Esper while scolding him to leave since she was tending to all the land. Therefore, he should go to work, while Perrin complained about her tugging his ear. Zenia watched this, surprised by a silver ring reprimanding a gold ring. But Perrin noticed the girl watching and said she was finally awake, giving her a charming smile while holding a hoe in his hands. The girl seemed startled and just stared at Perrin. Perrin asked if she liked gardening, but the maid told him to let her rest. Zenia reflected that she had never seen a gold ring Esper like him before. The Pei family leader walked with the girl, saying he was an expert in gardening and that the vegetables he planted would be served for her dinner to try. But Zenia only looked at the horizon across the plantation, watching the sunrise over the wheat planted by Peiperin, and questioning why he had saved her. Peiran asked if she wouldn't regret leaving such an interesting world at such a young age. Zenia said she had no reason to live, stopping in the middle of their path. Peiran fell silent at her statement, looking down. He said he had never had a child and, if she didn't mind, she could become his daughter and join the Pei family. The girl was surprised, and Peiran told her she could forget her past and start a new life by his side. He promised she wouldn't have to live in fear anymore since no one knew she was in Celestial City, and added that if there was one thing he was as good at as gardening, it was keeping secrets. Zenia asked if he wasn't worried she might cause him trouble, but Peiran knelt and said if he were so concerned, he wouldn't have brought the little girl there. Zenia asked what he wanted her to give him in return. Peiran asked if he should answer something so she would stay. Then he said he wanted to protect someone, a child like her, with unlimited potential who, in the near future, would make a difference. Peiran placed a hat on her head, asked for her hand, and promised to give her bell peppers and cherry tomatoes, as she waved, thinking they were her least favorite vegetables. Then Zenia noticed something among the plants, a small sparrow injured in the middle of the field. The girl picked up the small sparrow in her hands. She brought the little bird closer to her face, examining it. Reflecting that it seemed to be in pain, covering the sparrow, she told it not to worry because it would soon be over. But Peiran intervened, saying she should let him take care of it now. Zenia handed the sparrow to her father and asked what he was doing. Her father began using fire on the sparrow. Zenia asked if he was going to burn it to death, but her father denied it. She asked what he was doing by setting the sparrow on fire. Zenia was stunned. The sparrow started to heal, and her father explained that high-level espers could control elements in various ways, a common skill in Celestial City. The bird fully recovered in his hands, and Peiran asked if she knew why only a few espers reach special grade status. He releases the bird, saying the key is mastering both sides of power, while Zenia is amazed, having never seen fire used like that. She asks if that fire doesn't burn but instead heals. Peiran explains that it's not like healing, but more like giving a little help. He demonstrates a curve in his fire, saying that if she sees fire as a destructive force, it will only ever be a tool to kill. Zenia is impressed by her father's presentation. Peiran continues, saying that where there is death, there should also be life. Therefore, if she embraces the life-giving side of fire, she could save herself even in the darkest hour, pointing at his daughter, and saying that the true potential of an esper lies in the depths of their hearts. Thus, she raises her hand to the sky and says it's a heart of fire. Peiran says he likes that name, and will call it Heart of Fire from now on. Zenia sits, and says that Sparrow was just like her because they both had a second chance at life. Then she stands and tells Peiran she would like to learn, and her father agrees, saying they'll see what she can do. He takes her to a white room and says this will be her training area from now on. He leads her to Ji-man, telling her she can't watch dramas there, and should go to the entertainment room, while Ji-man simply waves at the girl. Zenia greets Ji-man, calling her sister, and Ji-man looks at her with a smile. During training, Peiran tells her to feel the heat of the flames, and the girl manages to release a small flame, but her father releases a bigger one, which makes the little girl feel hot. It even burns her face, though her father apologizes afterward. Ji-man flips the calendar, showing the date as July 7, 2019. Meanwhile, Zenia continues training with her father, and her flame grows hotter each day. As the day passes, Ji-man changes the calendar date. Zenia trains again, and her father praises her determination. Time goes on as Zenia trains. Peiran explains that fire isn't Zenia's natural element, so if she wants to reach everyone, there are no shortcuts, only practice. And so, more time passes. Ji-man becomes increasingly impressed by the power of Zenia's growing flame. Months go by during this training. The room becomes scarred and damaged, and as more months pass, the room becomes completely ruined over time, and Peiran tells her to get used to the sensation of her body burning. Thus, Zenia trains harder every day, with Ji-man watching, always thinking her young lady could do it. Months continue to pass. Peiran passes by the room with Zenia, telling her to let him know when lunch is ready, and Ji-man says she'll deliver it on time. Time continues to pass. Peiran joins Ji-man to watch a drama, saying the Demon Lord is really cool, while Zenia walks by on her way to train. But Zenia grabs her father and says he's going to train with her, though her father, disappointed, still wants to watch the drama. Time continues to pass, and Zenia sees Ji-man lying on a couch as she comes back from training. Zenia properly covers Ji-man, and the maid says her young lady did well today. But Zenia simply kneels and thanks Ji-man for her help. Months go by, and back in Zenia's training, she says the heart of fire really works and no longer hurts while her father uses the power with her. But her father tells her not to push herself too hard because even if she doesn't master the heart of fire, she'll still be an exceptional esper. The girl lowers her head and asks if it's something only special level espers can achieve, realizing she still doesn't understand the mystery but desires to figure it out. Clenching her fist, she says it's too early for her to give up, so her father must continue teaching her. Peiran smiles and says he will. More time passes. This time, Zenia trains by running at night, without letting the sweat dripping onto the ground affect her. Months go by, and Zenia continues training. While balancing on a rock, Ji-man tells her to take a break as she eats, and time goes on. Zenia trains even during bath time, where Ji-man calls out, saying she's been in the bath too long, and will get wrinkled if she keeps it up. Over the years, Zenia's focus grew stronger. She trained even at bedtime, thinking about staying focused because she would succeed. She then released fire that burned through her blanket, rushing to find Ji-man to locate the fire extinguisher. Months passed. Ji-man even stocked hundreds of fire extinguishers in Pair-an and Zenia's training room. Eventually, Zenia collapsed after fighting her father, but she got to her knees and tried again. It had always been like this, even when she was nearly burned, even when she was completely injured. As she grew older, she always tried again. Now more mature, she asked her father for one more chance. Almost unable to stand, she asked to try again. These words echoed in her mind until she once again asked her father for one more chance. A flame ignited. Ji-man told Pair-an to be careful with a candle, and he simply agreed. They congratulated Zenia and presented her with a 10-year-old cake. Pair-an mentioned it had been a year since she came to live with them and that they had prepared her favorite flavor, strawberry. Ji-man then asked if it wasn't Pair-an's favorite. Ji-man popped the confetti at the girls' party, wishing a happy 10th birthday to their young lady. Zenia watched the confetti fall to the ground. Pair-an handed his daughter her gift, asking if she remembered the pair she used to carry and how they had broken. However, he had asked a friend to create a replica. This friend of Pair-an was the best forger in the entire city, and had been his friend for a long time. Zenia stood in front of the gift as her father asked if she liked it, but the girl said she couldn't give up and needed to protect the child. Pair-an called her silly and said all she needed to do was protect herself, and now take her gift. Ji-man encouraged their young mistress to accept the gift, but Zenia simply stared down, feeling lost. As the three remained silent at the table with heads lowered, Ji-man told her young mistress they couldn't delay any longer. Then, she began to fade away. Zenia called Ji-man her sister and tried to bring her back. When her sister vanished, she completely denied what was happening. Pair-an also disappeared, telling Zenia not to be afraid because it was just an illusion. He said they were out of time, but Zenia refused to accept it, calling for her father. But Pair-an simply ordered her to take it. Zenia tried to grab her father, but he disappeared. She fell into despair, crying. Completely devastated, she collapsed to the ground, sobbing, denying everything that had just happened. But she began to wrap herself in black wires as her needle fell. Zenia tried to grab the needle, telling it not to leave, freeing herself little by little from each wire, and finally breaking free. She leapt toward the needle, and regained her adult strength just as she reached it. She finally grasped it, reflecting that she had succeeded. But she started screaming, still deep in her subconscious, holding the needle, though not tightly. The needle vanished, and she asked what it was, and where she was. Back to square one, entangled in black wires with only one red wire on the ground. Zenia fell to the ground, screaming in pain. Shi-mei's aging returned to her skin, making her feel pain in her heart as she held the red wire. But that wire ignited a fire in her hand, reminding her of her father's words that she was a force of nature and could not be contained. She closed her hand over the flame, remembering that her destiny was now in her own hands. She began to awaken with her fire, recalling her father asking if she liked her new name, to which she had said yes. She then released the fire again. Shi-mei was moving away from the girl, calling out to Yao Guang and asking if he wanted to confirm her death. But Yao Guang tried to warn Shi-mei about something. Zenia grabbed Shi-mei's foot. The girl was startled, unsure of what to do at that moment, looking back, when an explosion of fire consumed the scene, incinerating everything in its path. Inside the barrier were Shannon and Leo Chuan. Shannon remarked that Zenia must have started fighting, and Leo agreed that it seemed so. But Shannon remained silent, thinking he couldn't allow Leo Chuan to die because of him, and that he wouldn't let that happen. As he stared at Leo Chuan's back, Leo told him not to imagine his death with his pea-sized brain, and Shannon wondered how he knew that. Chuan keeps staring ahead, distressed. He tells Shannon that the only person capable of killing him is already dead. Outside, the fire is so intense that it frightens Tian Lang and Dudu. It causes Shi-mei to slam her back against the wall along with Yao Guang. Yao Guang holds Shi-mei and asks if she can stand, and Shi-mei says she can but questions who told him to get involved. Both notice Zenia's flames growing larger. The girl begins to walk out of her flames, taking long strides away from her own fire, saying that Shi-mei hasn't answered her question, because she wants to know the name of the opponent who left her in such a deplorable state. Shi-mei and Yao Guang are surprised to see the girl rising. Yao Guang recalls that Shi-mei's greatest weapon is the element of surprise, and when her opponent dodges, she loses the advantage. He says that for Zenia to escape such a deadly trap, she must be incredibly skilled, and he wonders how a silver ring can be so strong. But Shi-mei tells Yao Guang to let her go, though Yao Guang says she can't while grabbing her arm. However, he looks at Shi-mei and notices something. She is walking toward the flames without hesitation, and has a confident smile on her face. Yao Guang lets her go, telling her to go, which Shi-mei does, even while dripping blood, heading toward the fire. Shi-mei says it seems like Zenia won't find peace until she gives her an answer. She approaches, saying she'll make Zenia remember this moment. With a smile, she says her name is Shi-mei. Zenia says it's too ordinary, and doesn't match Shimei's extravagance. Shimei laughs and says Zenia got her, while holding her arm, which is completely in pain. Shimei reflects that it feels like every part of her body is on the verge of breaking, but she closes her eyes, wondering why she's so happy. Zenia calls out to Shimei and thanks her, saying her chest still hurts because of her. Therefore, she wants to end this quickly because she doesn't want anyone else to see her like this, moving her hand towards Shimei, while reflecting that she especially doesn't want Leo Chuan to see her like this. In a control room, someone is watching a report, where the reporter tells the cameraman to focus on her. She says she is currently in front of the Leo family estate, and just now, a storm created by human beings interrupted her interview. She orders the cameraman to aim the camera at the center of the storm, and he asks if she means that point in the middle. The camera focuses on the storm. As it approaches, he notices someone on top of the storm, saying it's unbelievable, seeing a person descending from the storm of lightning. It's a child floating while looking at the sky. The cameraman says he's a divine-level descendant. Reporter Yuli says Leo Chuan is the next to become a divine level. She says this child is incredibly powerful until she notices Wuyu approaching and turns the camera toward her. Wuyu says that precisely because Leo Chuan is strong, it doesn't matter what color he wears above all. The reporter asks what she means by that. Wuyu walks away, asking if she knows why the rings exist, causing the reporter to question. Wuyu explains they exist for those within the wall. She says they exist so people can openly explore and oppress one another, which is why they control society's resources. Because as long as these people exist, there will be distorted desires and senseless murders that will never stop. She says the rings are a grand lie created by a few people, and unfortunately, she is one of them. Leo Chuan opens his eyes in the midst of the storm, and Wuyu says that instead of him becoming a divine level, Chuan looks at Wuyu before she finishes her sentence, and she concludes by saying she's looking for a way to help him break it, because he would be better than continuing as she has. The recording is paused. A short-haired woman says that placing hope in the hands of those who benefit from breaking the rules is the reason the divine lady is naive. The representative of the He family looks at several rooms behind her with hybrids and remains silent. But she questions if Qing Dai isn't also too naive. Qing Dai asks if she doesn't like people speaking about the divine lady. The He representative asks why she would care, as she is a ghost loyal to the Lin name, not the Wu. But she just wants to remind her that no monster, after experiencing the freedom of this world, would obediently return to its cell, so she should be careful. Qing Dai ran her finger over the rim of her wine glass. Representative He remarked that no matter what she did, she could not defeat him because espers and monsters were fundamentally different. She added that geniuses like Leo Chuan reached the pinnacle of their abilities by pushing their powers to the limit and evolving every time they used them. But the outcome for monsters who abused their abilities was always the same. As she began to explain, Qing Dai hurled her wine glass at Representative He. The glass ended up staining a painting of Shimei. Qing Dai scorned the representative, calling her actions on the council foolish, and sarcastically criticized her. However, she quickly composed herself and apologized, saying she had lost her temper. Representative He commented that Qing Dai was acting strangely that day. Soon, the representative turned her attention to the paintings behind her. She wondered what might be special about them, and whether Qing Dai had found something unique among the mutated black rings. As Xiaomei walked, violet butterflies appeared along her path. But soon, those butterflies began to disintegrate midair. They turned into the blood of the girl walking. Xiaomei created more butterflies and stated, "Not yet." But all the butterflies were incinerated by Zenia, who remained silent. Shimei caused flowers to bloom from the butterflies and called Zenia's name, aiming for an attack. Tian Lang remarked that Shimei didn't seem to want to return, and Duda begged him to save her. Tian Lang simply called him an idiot. This made the boy start crying as he clung to his stuffed animal. Tian Lang asked how many times Duda would try to save her before realizing she didn't want that. Yao Guang covered his face with his hand, pondering the situation. Shimei approached Zenia, who defended herself with a barrier of fire. Zenia commented on the beautiful sight as she held her wand. She swung it and stated it was unfortunate, incinerating the flowers. She declared she would never lose to the same person twice, burning Shimei's roses. Meanwhile, the people following Quentin noticed the noise coming from the logistics area. Quentin's subordinate ordered everyone to follow him as he would provide supplies. They obeyed, but a child looked up at the sky, reaching out to grab the butterfly flowers falling from above. After the battle, Leo Chuan's shield prevailed. Zenia wondered what on earth that was. She saw a gigantic rabbit amidst the smoke. The rabbit expressed happiness, while Yao Guang held Shimei and Duda cried. But the rabbit turned back into the boy's stuffed animal. Duda called to Yao Guang, speaking of Shimei, but the man assured him she was still alive. He apologized for speaking so harshly and asked if Duda was hurt anywhere. Duda said it was fine as long as his sister was okay. Shimei was unconscious on Yao Guang's shoulder. Yao Guang laid Shimei down and asked Qixi to meet them in the Exile Zone, much to Tian Lang's disapproval. Yao Guang instructed Duda to check on Zenia, but they heard a commotion near the containers. They noticed people approaching, putting Yao Guang on alert. It was a massive crowd seeking the supplies, disregarding everyone else. Quentin's subordinate ordered the crowd to stop pushing and behave. The rushing people ended up shoving Duda back, but Yao Guang caught him before he fell and got hurt. Tian Lang, perched on a rooftop, called out to the crowd. He was ignored by everyone, while Quentin's subordinate hoped he wouldn't be noticed. All the supplies were unloaded, a container full of boxes. The crowd rushed inside when they realized it was actual food. Selfishly, each person grabbed a box, shouting that it was theirs. The hungriest began eating their supplies right there. A child stopped beside Yao Guang and Shimei. The boy looked at them. Noticing Shimei was severely injured, Yao Guang asked what he was doing. The boy simply offered a piece of candy in his hand. He said that if she kept the candy in her mouth, her injuries wouldn't hurt as much. Yao Guang nodded in agreement, but one of the civilians was kicked by a gang member wielding a weapon. The gang member ordered everyone to drop their food and not take a single bite, declaring that the supplies were now under the control of the cannibal gang. The gang member kicked another civilian, demanding he spit out his food. Yao Guang stood up and faced the man. He drew the gun from his back pocket and told the people to take the supplies and leave. But the man challenged him, asking if Yao Guang didn't know what he was doing, and ordered him to put his hands up. However, Yao Guang doesn't respond, and he asks if he was deaf, until the gang member is pierced by a black energy sword, and his body is split in half in front of Yao Guang, calling him a monstrosity. Tian Lang rises on top of the container, standing above everyone else, emanating his energy as he recounts being called a monstrosity. Yao Guang simply wipes the blood off his face, and the boy from before realizes that Tian Lang is an esper, looking at the man on top of the container in surprise. But the people throw their food into the air and shout that their savior has arrived, which surprises Tian Lang, and also surprises Yao Guang. The boy asks if Yao Guang is there to save the Exile Zone, but Yao Guang questions this as Duda calls out to him. Duda notices that the target of their mission has disappeared. Yao Guang curses as he realizes Zenia has vanished. Meanwhile, Quentin is carrying Zenia on his back, saying she looks miserable and questioning how she got so bad. But the girl says he should look at the other girl and that, if he hadn't arrived, she would have handled it, telling Quentin to put her down and leave, but he responds that it's fine, because that was the sound of the barrier deactivating. Thus, he takes Zenia away from the place. Tian Lang is on top of the container when he notices Leo Chuan's shield dissolving. Then the man places his shoe on the ground outside the shield, walking along with Shannon and asking what all the commotion is about. However, several black energy swords are pointed at them, which scares Shannon. But Leo says the crybaby must be the one who made those swords, and then he bursts into electricity against the swords. The civilians flee the area, realizing that espers are fighting, and Tian Lang laughs while standing on the container, saying he is no ordinary esper, bursting into laughter in front of his opponent, and then lamenting over the poor black rings. Noticing the boy's candies being trampled by people's shoes, Tian Lang tells Leo Chuan that they've finally met, and that he's been waiting for a long time. Yao Guang simply calls his friend by name, observing his behavior, and thinking that if they fought Leo now, they couldn't keep Shimei safe. Duda gets scared and calls his brother Yao Guang, but Yao Guang simply looks at the boy confidently. Taking out his phone and seeing that Qixi would arrive in a few minutes, Yao Guang smiles, and tells Leo Chuan that they don't want to engage in conflict with him because if he leaves with Shannon, they will leave the place peacefully, since the high levels are generous and don't want to fight the Leo family. But if he continues protecting the son of the deity, he would be declaring war with the 7 families, which makes Shannon reflect. Leo Chuan says he is aware and asks if they are there to mess with Shannon, because he expected gratitude from them, as they know what Shannon is. Shannon questions what Leo means and calls him by name, as Leo Chuan starts reflecting on Tian Lang's ability, having a memory of Wu Yu surrounded by the same swords, telling him not to come closer. Leo Chuan tells Shannon to listen carefully, and says that all the abilities these black rings can use exist because they are alive thanks to Wu Yu's blood. This shocks Shannon completely, repeating about them feeding on his mother's blood. Tian Lang mocks, saying he's clueless and asking if they want him to repeat it, but Shannon orders him to shut up. Leo Chuan is questioned about the abilities and what else he doesn't know. He admits he doesn't know much, but he explains that the Lin family experimented with Wu Yu's immortality. Chuan reveals that all the families, except the Leo family, sent advanced grades for the experiments but failed. The 7 who received Wu Yu's blood became half human, half phantom. Leo concludes that after that, experiments with black rings began, without expecting success. Shannon asks where this was and whether Leo had seen him, but the man denies it, saying it's like finding a ghost. Shannon sinks into despair, questioning not finding anything, because among the 8 families, The Leo family ranks third in overall strength and hasn't left the top 3 in 2 generations. And knowing his mother's situation, even the powerful in the Leo family couldn't help her. Wondering what kind of power could exist in the celestial city, Shannon questions whether Leo Chuan, Zenia, and the others protecting him make them enemies of the celestial city. And if this is really the enemy he is facing. Shannon remembers Alvin, and him being hanged by the Esper, as well as his mother imprisoned in a cage. Thus, the boy clenches his fist, but opens it again, his palm hurt from the pressure. Chuan tells Shannon not to let his determination waver, as the reason they were sent was for their heads. Therefore, no matter what rules govern the world, this generation would break them. Shannon says he didn't understand any of that, and didn't care, but he still dreamed of his mother. Therefore, she was waiting for him, and no matter what, he would find her. Chuan says he wasn't ready for that. However, since he said so himself, they would make it happen. Shannon says those guys knew where the laboratory was, so he plans to make them talk, and Chuan just agrees. But Tian Lang finds himself angry with all this conversation, until Yao Guang notices a bird flying overhead, and that bird defecates while flying. Shannon tries to push Chuan, asking for attention, but the droppings fall on Leo Chuan's suit. Chuan becomes extremely angry about all of this, and notices what happened to his suit, shouting Zhou Shi's name in rage, until Zhou Shi asks if they were looking for him, which surprises everyone. But Shannon notices Leo Chuan activating his powers, until Zhou Shi arrives alongside Su Zhan and Yoli, with Taya tied up. Returning to when Zenia was fighting, Zhou Shi jumps across buildings with a cell phone, activating a message on his phone. It was Han Yoli's audio in the temporary group. Zhou Shi is surprised it wasn't Han Shu and wonders if they were playing with him, but orders one of the birds to find Yoli and point the right direction. Thus, when Wilderness deactivates autopilot, the car crashes into the bridge railing, making a piece of the railing fall into the water. This leaves Taya astonished, until Yoli approaches her with a punch, telling her not to even think about hurting him, causing massive damage to the city bridge. Taya is scared by this destructive power, but Chi-Si grabs her and says it was close. Taya notices Chi-Si, and the young man tells her not to stand still and wait to get hit, releasing Taya onto the ground, both panting and startled. Taya wonders if the opponent was the little girl, and Chi-Si says it was more or less. Yoli had pierced the barrier created by Chi-Si with just one punch, and then begins to pull her arm back, with a serious expression as she faces the barrier, saying it was close, while Su Zhan begins to emit energy. Thus, he rises with his system online, and Yoli asks if he's okay. Su Zhan just looks at the little girl, and holds her hand, saying her name, but Yoli says just her first name is fine, and that saying her full name sounds like she's in trouble. Thus, Su Zhan gets up from the ground, tracking everything within meters, noticing Taya and Chi-Si on the other side of the barrier. Su Zhan tells Yoli to watch where she steps. Taya yells at Chi-Si, who replies that the delay would have caused her defeat against Yoli. Chi-Si begins to levitate the other side of the bridge, where the people were, and both Su Zhan and Yoli hold on, with Su Zhan telling Yoli to keep going. Su Zhan extends some robotic wires from his back, grabbing the car and part of the bridge to prevent them from falling, but Chi-Si throws the bridge toward the water, making the other side of the bridge fragment. Yoli and Su Zhan are on the fragment that was thrown into the water, and Yoli says they were stuck in the middle. Looking at the trapped car and the intact other side of the bridge, Su Zhan begins to analyze the bridge, noticing it was severely damaged and would collapse in a minute, but he starts calculating the distance to the side of the bridge where Chi-Si and Taya were, saying that if he enters Taya's control range, he will be disabled, so he will throw Yoli to keep her safe, telling the girl to find a safe place to rest, and Yoli agrees. Su Zhan takes off with his boots while tying Yoli in his robotic arms, but Su Zhan falls because the charging system needed improvement, and Yoli stood still like a rock. Su Zhan doesn't understand what happened, but Yoli apologizes. But both notice the bridge beginning to fall into the water, getting closer and closer to the ocean. Wilderness says he hates water and that they needed to think of something fast. Yoli says she has an idea, and Su Zhan says it was the other way to get to the other side. Taya wonders what they were doing, but Chi-Si has no idea, looking ahead with concern, noticing an unsettling feeling again and telling them to leave with Taya. Wilderness begins to accelerate. Su Zhan was on top of the car with the wires and asks if Yoli was ready. Then, the bridge finally reaches the water's edge. Yoli observes this, worried, stepping hard on the car's accelerator, while Su Zhan prepares an energy burst in his hands, activating the charge and making them both take off. Thus, they take off toward the other side of the bridge, and Wilderness says he's afraid of heights. Reaching the side of the bridge where Taya and Chi-Si were fleeing, Taya says they were messing with her because they couldn't cross, activating her ability and telling them to go to hell. Thus, Wilderness begins to malfunction as Yoli drives. Su Zhan is forced to disconnect from the system, all this while the car was floating. which causes him to fall toward the water. Once the car hits the water, Taya laughs, and Chisi calls her, until the girl notices something strange there. Chisi tells her to run, because Joshi is using his powers and approaching rapidly, making a slash through the air, and then sheathing his sword. The young man smiles, as he notices his ally's car floating. Yoli was holding onto the car, and Joshi says they did a good job. Thus, they defeat the people and grab the rope from Hanshu's car. Yoli tells Taya not to try anything funny, or she'll beat her up, but Taya says she'll kill her, while Sujan asks if they should gag them. The little girl agrees, but she's called by Joshi. Yoli simply responds to the young man's call, asking what was wrong with Joshi, but Joshi says she did a good job but should return home. Yoli just stares at Joshi. The little girl was playing rock paper scissors with Hanshu, but Hanshu loses by throwing paper. Thus, Yoli says she won again and that her brother is silly. Hanshu just admires the sky as snow falls on them. Yoli runs to the end of the temple stairs, but Hanshu tells her to be careful because snow is slippery. Thus, the girl steps inside the temple, opening the door and noticing something. Joshi was praying to the Buddha statue, which makes the girl think she's interrupting him. Hanshu asks what Yoli is waiting for before saying hi to her uncle Joshi, and the girl tells her brother to be quiet. Shu asks what's wrong with calling Joshi uncle and if she prefers older brother. Thus, Hanshu kneels beside Joshi, placing a gift, pushing it toward Joshi and saying it's vegan cake. Joshi says he appreciates the gesture but can't accept it. However, Shu tells him to keep it because his mom made it, and it's a gift from his aunt to the Han family, so he bets his aunt is expecting Joshi. Joshi takes the gift with a sweaty hand, saying that Hanshu has won, and asks if the only reason Hanshu came there was to deliver vegan cakes, but Shu denies it, saying he came to talk to Master Shanji. Joshi asks if it wasn't for him, and Hanshu just laughs. The temple was entirely covered in snow, as Yoli waited outside, facing Buddha. Hanshu calls Joshi, who responds to his call. He asks what Joshi would do if he said he gave up the position of guardian. Joshi is completely stunned by this. Hanshu looks at Joshi in fear and says it's a joke, but Joshi asks what happened. Shu remains silent for a second but says that Yoli's powers are fading. Joshi questions this, and Shu says that every night Yoli is no different from a normal person. Wuyu was targeted due to her immortality, attracting greed. Yoli's powers were fading, making her vulnerable to exploitation. Joshi says he can't imagine Yoli's torment, and wonders if she'll be the next Wuyu, a victim of this endless war. Hanshu asserts that the prophecy will be fulfilled in 2 years and needs Joshi to understand his sister's power loss, and keep it a secret, because if discovered before then, he'll maintain his duty as a guardian. Joshi asks what he would do if he couldn't, and Hanshu says he would leave the guardian plan, take his sister, and go far away. Therefore, Joshi could call him a coward and a deserter, but Shannon was a stranger. Yoli, who was playing, notices she needs a handkerchief. Hanshu asks to be forgotten, and a bird delivers a handkerchief to Yoli. After this conversation, Yoli bids farewell to Joshi, saying they were leaving. Hanshu says he is the only one allowed to be called brother, and Joshi gives him another nickname. Yoli punches Hanshu, telling him to move, and Shu says she is strong. Joshi tells them to stay safe. Hanshu simply agrees and calls Yoli to leave. Thus, both turn around and leave the temple. Meanwhile, Joshi reflects on Hanshu wanting to be a good older brother, and the temple was still covered in snow. Time passes, and the snow completely disappears from the temple. A sparrow flies to Joshi with a letter. He takes it and thanks his friend. It was Hanshu asking Joshi to take care of her for him. Sujan restrains Taya and Chisi in the car and orders them to stay quiet, while watching Joshi and Yoli talking, and his system alerts him that the conversation is not going well, but he chooses not to interfere. Thus, Sujan enters the car. Joshi says she cannot return the way she came and that they need to cross the gate, so Yoli should stay in touch when she gets home. He then tells the girl to get into the car, but Yoli grabs Joshi's hand and calls him brother, asking if he even sees her as a unique person. She knew what it meant to fight and the consequences of defeat, so she didn't need to be treated like a younger sister who needed protection. Yoli says she is a special level Esper and will take her older brother's place as guardian. Joshi remembers his younger self asking to go instead of his sister. He then looks at Yoli without saying a word. Yoli stares at Joshi, almost crying, saying she is not the little girl who used to hide behind her brother. Thus, they remain silent together. Joshi closes his eyes to think, telling her to promise that every day after sunset, she would stay by his side, apologizing to Hanshu, as keeping her by his side counted as protection. Wilderness asks if Sujan is listening to the conversation, but Sujan denies it. Yoli and Joshi stand in front of the car. The doors close, and Yoli notices the excellent soundproofing. Sujan tries to activate autopilot, but Wilderness refuses. Wilderness says he doesn't want to drive anymore because he almost drowned and asks if they care about his emotions. Yoli says it's okay because they can drive manually since Zhou Shi is there. She adds that they are counting on Zhou Shi, but Zhou Shi doesn't even know how to drive. Inside the car, Su Zhan installs basic driving skills into his system, and Yoli asks if he has internet in his brain. She says he seems like a walking computer, while Wilderness says he is his father's proudest creation. Zhou Shi asks about Qixi's phone, and Yoli asks Su Zhan to look ahead. When they leave, Zhou Shi says, Amitba, the representative of the Lin family, sets his coat aside. He says hybrids are weak and that Qi Qingdao spent too much to produce that trash, wanting to see carnage. His ability is clairvoyance. The representative in the bathtub tells him to be patient, because the patriarch's scene is just waiting, it hasn't happened yet. The man asks if the ghost knows something and tells him to share. After remaining silent, the ghost reveals that the patriarch had taken the six himself, and that his brother never made wrong decisions, so the six must have hidden abilities or connections. Thus, he shatters an eye screen in his hand, reflecting that his brother never told him anything but made him guess everything, handing control of the laboratory to someone outside the family. The other man tells him to keep an eye on them, and the ghost looks at himself in the mirror above him, reflecting on someone getting rid of the mirror. Su Zhan, Zhou Shi, and Yoli finally arrive at the battle. Shannon reflects that they must be his allies. Su Zhan says the protection target has been detected and has no abnormalities. Zhou Shi reflects that now is not the time for a reunion. Shannon is impressed and looks to the side, seeing Chuan surprised to see a robot, a monk, and a miner together. Shannon asks why he is so surprised. Qixi, who is restrained along with Taya, starts to struggle, but Qixi observes the reunion of the people. Yaoguang looks ahead, but soon orders Dudu to find Pei Zenia, and the boy agrees. He then looks at Tian Lang, and moves his hand, closing two fingers right after that, finally showing the closed hand to Yaoguang. Yaoguang activates his ability, which makes his eyes glow. Shannon, Zhou Shi, and Chuan notice the killing intent in the air. Yoli reflects that Shannon is the person her brother must protect, but she notices something ahead of her. She calls Zhou Shi, who, in turn, tells her to keep an eye on them and not let go of the rope, instructing Su Zhan to help Yoli. Yoli agrees with this. Chuan remains silent while observing Shannon. Shannon notices his gaze and reflects that he is about to do something. Leo touches Shannon and pushes him away. Shannon yells at Leo Chuan, but Leo simply closes his hand, forming a thunder barrier around himself. Shannon questions what this means. Chuan says it is perfectly safe inside the barrier, and he shouldn't overthink it because he'll be back in the blink of an eye. Tian Lang, with a smile, summons the black dust, which begins to surround Shannon's guardians in the shape of ghosts. But this dust is easily cut down by Zhou Shi, while Su Zhan protects Yoli. However, the dust tries to approach the two captives, but Yoli steps on it, saying it wouldn't take anyone and throwing pieces of the ground at the dust. Tian Lang directs his dust toward Leo Chuan, but the same dust is completely pierced by the man's electricity, who simply looks at Tian Lang. Tian Lang says this was to be expected, but Leo Chuan charges at the young man with lightning, and as Chuan approaches, Tian Lang prepares himself, saying he can come. The dust ghosts around the barrier created by Leo Chuan. Shannon just stares at them, unable to get past the barrier to reach him, while reflecting that there is nothing he can do at this moment. Tian Lang and Chuan prepare to trade blows, with Tian Lang aiming a punch at Chuan's face, which Chuan easily dodges by moving his body to the side, and tells Tian Lang to use his tricks and not waste his time, striking the young man and saying his time is valuable. Tian Lang blocks the blow and asks what Chuan is thinking about. He then calls the black dust into his thoughts, which swirls around Leo Chuan's electricity like whirlpools. Leo keeps his back turned, but then stomps on the ground with force, leaping into the middle of the black dust, and dissolving it with an electric kick, hitting Tian Lang's arm immediately after, which sends him flying, even with the black dust shielding him from the blow. Chuan tells Tian not to think he could hinder him with those dust ghosts. Tian Lang defends himself from the blow, which slightly injures his arm, creating a barrier around himself to fend off Chuan's electric attacks. However, Chuan tells him to keep his eyes on him, charging toward Tian Lang with an electric fist, hitting the man's barrier with the attack. Tian Lang is thrown downward by this strike, which destroys much of the battle scene. Tian Lang is completely injured with a rod piercing his chest, and reflects that if he hadn't divided the dust into three, Chuan wouldn't have been able to hurt him. Thus, he grabs the rod stuck in his chest, and pulls it out of his body, throwing it behind him. Tian Lang prepares to fight while thinking he'll let Chuan have this moment of triumph for now, as Chuan charges at him with full force. Yoli warns Su Zhan that the dust is on his left, and he understands. The dust was almost surrounding Taya and Qixi. The girl tries to hold onto the rope while thinking this is nonsense, and Su Zhan looks at the smoke beside him. Yoli is being dragged by the rope thanks to the black dust. but she grips it tightly, saying they're playing dirty. She activates her ability and pulls the rope hard, while Su-Jan fires a burst at the dust, thus forming a strong duo. However, Yoli's shoulder wound reopens, and she begins to feel pain in her arm. Su-Jan says she has a serious dislocation in her right shoulder and that it's getting worse, asking her to take off her shirt so he can activate the healing mode. But Yoli refuses, tying the rope around her waist and saying they'll deal with it before sending their enemies away. Therefore, she asks Su-Jan to promise not to tell anyone about this, asking if he can do that. Su-Jan says he understands and will respect her decision, so they should finish this quickly. She is cutting through the black dust with his sword, slashing it with relative ease, and defending, saying Shannon is alone and he should go to him. Shannon is being surrounded by black dust ghosts. Shi, however, is surrounded again by black dust, and complains as he fends it off with his sword, calling Shannon before being surrounded by dust. Shanyu says that Shannon was being pathetic, because the arrogant bastard Leo Chuan had completely restrained him and turned him into a helpless spectator, asking what Shannon was waiting for and if he didn't want to prove them wrong, because he knew he was right, and it would all end the moment he broke free. Shannon says that Leo didn't turn him into anything and that it was simply the truth. Shanyu questions what he means, and Shannon says he is the weakest there and cannot deny it, making him the primary target. However, even though people knew he was the weak link in the fight, they were all focused on fighting stronger opponents, leaving him alone. Still, he has a bad feeling while Yaoguang is surrounded by black dust. Yaoguang looks at him with his golden eyes. Shannon notices that something is wrong, and recalls him telling Leo that he was going to die. Yet Leo said he wanted to believe in Shannon, but he should open his eyes and look closely. Shannon activates his ability, but he is quickly pushed away, gaining a vision of the future. Several alarms blare in red. Shannon is inside the laboratory, now destroyed and glowing red. The boy looks around, and sees the red glow along with black dust spreading through the place, accompanied by various cells holding dead people. Shannon wonders where he is, and notices black dust on his hand. It surrounds his injured fingers, but it soon dissolves. The boy is startled by the black dust on his hand, and thinks that he has apparently entered a strange space since he is not entirely familiar with his powers. Thus, he stands up and says he should find a way out. However, he notices a red alert nearby. It's a room with a boy sitting on a bed. The room glows red immediately after, and Shannon wonders what a child is doing there. Shannon says it's an Esper zone and could be dangerous for the boy. Approaching the cell afterward, Shannon grabs the boy's arm and tells him they need to get out of there. But the boy doesn't respond, and Shannon asks if he's okay. Still, the boy remains silent, and Shannon grows frustrated with the alarm, and the alarm stops shortly after. Shannon wonders why the alarm stopped. Yaoguang, now a child, says that for him to make it to the 5th layer of his consciousness, he definitely isn't as weak as he seems. Shannon releases the boy immediately, asking who he is, but dust begins to envelop the room where they are. The boy puts his feet on the ground, and rises from the bed, saying his name is Yaoguang and that Shannon should remember it. Shannon recalls those eyes, and Yaoguang says the reason for him to remember is that they are both children of divinity. Yaoguang grabs Shannon's arm, and says they can talk anywhere else because he doesn't like lingering here, and Shannon asks him to explain. But the conscious space shifts, creating an armchair in front of Yaoguang and causing Shannon to fall, thus forming an old house, the one where Shannon lived with Alvin. From the cabinets to the old gate, Yaoguang sits on the house's couch, and says this house is Shannon's safe conscious space. Shannon just stares at the boy. Yaoguang says it's no different from his own space since it looks like a toy box. The boy starts to move, and Shannon just observes, telling Yaoguang to stand up and not sit on the couch, and not even touch that same couch. Yaoguang remains seated on the couch, but Shannon's eyes activate his abilities, and he looks behind him, seeing some bullets near him. Yaoguang apologizes and suggests they leave to talk. Shannon asks what he's doing with those eyes. Yaoguang says he doesn't understand, and Shannon accuses him of lying because he's trying to trap him there, since the previous space wasn't his consciousness, nor was it Shannon's. Yaoguang asks why he would trap Shannon there. Shannon says he's the only one who can see through his illusions. Yaoguang frowns upon hearing this, but Shannon says he doesn't know exactly what the power is, but if his eyes don't see reality, he trusts his senses. Noticing bullets and a metallic hydroxide smell, along with the smell of blood, Shannon says that Yaoguang is his enemy, but creating this place based on his memories is low. Yaoguang says he catches on quickly and asks where he went wrong. Shannon remains silent, but begins to dissolve the imaginary space, saying that his safe place, it was already over, thus completely breaking Yaoguang's illusion and thinking he should warn Leo Chuan and the others. Outside the barrier, the battles were raging. Tian Lang and Chuan were still fighting. As Chuan prepared to attack Tian Lang, Shannon stood up inside the lightning cage, determined to take action. He said his eyes couldn't see reality. Then, stepping out of the barrier and heading toward the black dust, slowly being surrounded by the black dust, Shannon said that it wasn't real. Everyone in the battle was impressed by this and called out to Shannon. Zenia was healing along a wall, while Quentin was puzzled to see, for the first time, flames that healed. Zenia opened her eyes and looked at Quentin, which startled him, prompting him to ask how long she would keep panting like that. Zenia replied that healing takes time and asked if he thought she was made of iron, but Quentin reflected that her mouth was. Then he stood up and said they would arrive soon since his group was waiting outside. Therefore, she could take time to heal. He then offered Zenia his hand, but she said she wasn't going anywhere, because the brown-haired guy would likely send someone to confirm whether she was alive or dead, and she needed to stay alert, telling Quentin to leave and not interfere with her healing. Quentin reflected that she wouldn't let him drag her away, but they both noticed moments later that they were already there. Quentin removed his shirt and prepared for combat. Zenia asked what he was going to do, but Shannon said he wouldn't let the girl play the hero alone. At that moment, Dudu appeared and said he had found it. Quentin asked if they were kidding him, and Zenia said the opponent was all his. Shannon successfully dissolved the black dust surrounding him, thus breaking a layer of the illusion. He found himself in a strange space of distorted illusions, where all his friends were in a psychedelic space, including Chuan and Sujan, even Zhou, Shi and Yoli. Shannon said he realized it was a dream. Yao Guang appeared and remarked that he was truly sharp, as his world was ending before him, and he wasn't afraid. Shannon said that if it was a dream, he shouldn't be afraid, and said the ability creates dreams, but if the target realizes it, they escape, keeping Shannon in distant dreams. Yao Guang explained not entirely, as he didn't plan to trap people on the surface level forever, and just needed time to capture his friends. But Shannon having this level of understanding only 2 days after awakening was surprising. Shannon said it wasn't something he gained from his powers, and even without them, he could see the truth in his dream. Yao Guang asked how he would do that. Shannon replied that he refused to go under. Yao Guang insulted him, calling him a conceited brat, and said the dream's space would end. Therefore, he hoped Shannon had a chance to meet him for real, thus bringing time back to true reality. All the guardians and Shannon woke up from the dream. While Tian Lang complained about being pierced by an iron rod and not being able to have a different dream, but Yao Guang told him not to be upset. Taya asked if Shimei was dead, and Chi-Si said she was breathing. Yao Guang then asked Taya for his weapon. Taya said she was joking and handed the weapon to Yao Guang, who told her not to take his things. Shannon and Chuan were shocked, along with Zhou Shi and Su Zhan. Zhou Shi wondered when Taya and Chi-Si had freed themselves from the ropes, but they soon saw the ropes cut, and blood on the ground. Yoli said she was sure she wouldn't let them go, and looked ahead, frightened. Chuan and Shannon ran to the girl. Leo transformed into lightning and shouted that he would kill everyone there. Yoli was frightened by his greenish eyes staring ahead, seeing Zhou Shi running toward her, and wondering if he was angry. But Yoli looked down, and saw the rope was cut, and she was injured. Yoli collapsed to the ground beside Su Zhan, and Su Zhan told everyone not to panic because he was there, holding Yoli, activating the healing mode, saying a bullet had wounded her abdomen and caused hemorrhaging. Yoli said the pain was around her waist, but Su Zhan told her not to speak. Taya said she could have fired another shot at her. Tian Lang and Yao Guang exchanged glances without speaking. Moments earlier, at the beginning of the battle, the signal that Yao Guang and Tian Lang had created as children, it signified a disadvantageous situation. Therefore, they would send everyone into a dream, and in okay. As he clenches his fist, Yao Guang apologizes for leaving Tian Lang to handle the scenario and asks him not to die in the dream. But Tian Lang says he can take care of them anyway. Thus, the group dream was activated, and a 5-minute timer appeared. Yao Guang thinks that the child of divinity seemed more than he expected, but he is unable to touch him because of Leo Chuan's cage, noticing that Chuan could use his ability even while asleep. Meanwhile, Shannon, who was also sleeping, slightly moves a finger on his hand. Yao Guang is surprised to see him move as well, and notes that both of them are quite persistent. The timer reads 4 minutes, and Yao Guang approaches Yoli, then unties his 2 companions, and wakes them up, saying they were fine and should get up. Yao Guang waves, while looking at Su Zhan, and says he is observing, telling his companions that something was wrong with the dream, so they should leave. Taya simply thinks they shouldn't let them go, and says she will do something, grabbing Yao Guang's weapon and asking him to shoot her. At that moment, Shannon heard the sound of a gunshot in his illusion. Chi-Si finishes drawing on the ground, saying he is ready. Yao Guang says they are starting, and Tian Lang uses his ability, thus surrounding the structure on the ground. Everyone is preparing for the upcoming battle. Zhou Shi kneels near Yoli, telling her not to worry, and asking Su Zhan how injured she is. But the robot says her life isn't in danger, and he will treat the wound on her shoulder, telling Zhou Shi to step back. Zhou Shi merely repeats about the wound on her shoulder, but Yoli calls her older brother, Joshi, who says he is there. Yoli tries to say something, but they notice Shannon running and asking if everyone is okay. Yoli finishes her sentence, saying she made a big mistake. But Shannon is soon engulfed by black dust that surrounds him along with Chi-Si's structure, making everyone deny what is happening. In the corridor, a battle is underway. Quentin quickly retreats and spits something out of his mouth, throwing a tooth into his hand, and then rushing forward toward Dida's giant rabbit, landing a punch on the rabbit, and asking how it dared to knock out his tooth, declaring that today he would show what it means to be the champion of the ring battle. Zenia tells Quentin to stop. Quentin looks back. The girl tells him to look. Then they notice Dida, who is injured, even though Quentin didn't have a scratch, thanks to his shared damage ability. The plushie repeats, happy, several times, and Quentin looks worried. Quentin explains that by hitting the rabbit, the boy suffered damage, and Zenia realizes they can't defeat a child. But she wonders why he didn't react to the earlier punch, questioning if he doesn't feel pain. Zenia asks for the boy's name, but he becomes scared, recalling Zenia asking Xiame's name. Zenia tells him to relax because she won't hit everyone who says their names. The boy says his name is Dida but that he has no surname, and Zenia tells him to leave. Dida says that Yaoguang told him to kill her, and he must finish the job. Zenia questions how he would do that against two people. Quentin says she is right, and it will be easy since the boy is small. Dida says he won't run away, no matter what. Zenia says that if she's not mistaken, using too much of his powers would break Dida's body due to rejection, like pouring boiling water into a plastic cup. But Dida says he knows. Zenia asks why he is taking that risk just to kill her, assuming they promised him some candy. Dida just clings to the plushie, but says that if she dies and his older brother agrees, they would gain status in Celestial City and be adopted to live with the other espers. Therefore, he asks them to cooperate because he doesn't want to hurt anyone. Quentin is surprised, and Zenia doesn't change her expression, but soon bursts into laughter, falling into hysterics at the boy's thought process, which surprises Quentin and scares Didu. Zenia says there's no point in talking and that she will do it, but Quentin questions this, saying the boy doesn't look even 10 years old and his mind is a product of experiments. But Zenia tells Quentin to move, because his companion is suffering because of him, and he can't show mercy just because Didu is a child. Quentin is shocked by this thought. Zenia says she's not in a position to save anyone, thus she charges at Didu, calling on her fiery heart. While Didu calls on Happy to attack, Happy stands in front of Zenia's flames to protect Didu, but Zenia burns her plush toy while healing Didu with another flame. The boy asks her not to hurt his stuffed animal, and so the fire begins to dissolve. Quentin is surprised by this, but he looks at Zenia, thinking she was terrifying. Then smoke begins to emanate from the area, and tears fall to the ground. Dida asks why, seeing his plush toy incinerated on the floor. But Zenia picks up the plush toy and hands it to the boy, saying that he couldn't use the excuse of his age when thinking and shouldn't make her regret saving him. Quentin asks what Zenia is doing, and she says she will leave the child with him because she can't use her ability until the doll is repaired. And fixing the confused mind of a child requires more than sweet words. It requires real actions. Quentin calls out to Zenia, who says it's late, walking toward the sky labyrinth and running while sighing, heading toward the labyrinth very quickly, asking her friends to wait, because she was coming. Our video ends here. If you enjoyed it, please like and subscribe to the channel. Until next time, bye bye.